This is where I watched my parents die, Miku.
Oh
no! Was it scary when the car sped by?
I do PG-13 things to jars of mayonnaise.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're having a wonderful night tonight, or at least a better night than Glock social media team is, because it appears that somebody's Glocktober got a little bit too spooky as they announced a expansion of their horse lineup. Do not Google Glock horse expansion. Wouldn't do that, but it appears that some people did some wacky things. It might be a bit of a woman moment. It might be a bit of a Glocktard moment, but we got the Glock V before GTA 6. We might even get the Glock Gen 6 before GTA 6. How about that? Because apparently they are all hands on deck scrambling to get anything, everything off the market and then back on the market. Absolutely wacky, but we'll see how it pans out. We also have a war with Venezuela, more Trump assassination stuff, more people calling for the death of you and I, and yeah, lots of fun stuff. Maybe even a new FN Scar right after they canceled their program, and they're like, hey, we should bring something else out. Everybody's doing wacky things tonight. Speaking of wacky people doing wacky things, though, Richard, how's your night going?
Do not come.
Oh, I'm gonna come.
Yeah. Apparently my night's going just about the same as Glock's social media manager.
Pretty soon he's gonna be out in the barn to put it in manual labor, okay?
Yeah. I've been in the crawl space putting in manual labor. A shitty job, quite literally.
A horse crawl space or just a human crawl space?
Well, a house crawl space, but I feel like the horse crawl space might be larger at this point.
Well, I mean, it's meant for horse. Of course, it's a little larger. Don't get jealous, though. All right. Well, you got the green filter from Lucas. What are you talking about, Gloom? Or are you talking about the intro? I hope I'm not green. Unless it's this sweatshirt. which just arrived in the mail today. Weekend Gunner, he keeps sending me things. So I think he was trying to clear out his old stock. And so he sent me this. It arrived today. It's kind of neat. Neat little shooting hoodie. A little too cold now for these.
Well,
But good.
that's perfect timing to plug. He has a winter lineup coming out.
Coming very soon. I hope to have my own personal design arriving shortly.
I
That's the
spoke to
plan
him the other
anyways.
day. I was going to place an order, and he said, "Hey, we've got winter ones on the way." And I said, "Ooh, I'm going to wait until the winter ones come in and place an order." 'Cause I need some
Chat,
of those.
it took 5 minutes and 50 seconds for Jake to get fruity. I think that's a record. He's really showing that self-control. But thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. You look good too, man. Just
Put the toes away, Jake.
yeah, put the toes away. Put the toes away. Put the toes away from the horse. The Lightsport for 2 says Glock investing more in the horse division. Yes, I heard that they're expanding the horse division. Listen, you don't want to know what that stuff goes for per gallon. Absolutely ridiculous. Better than oil. Thank you, the Lightsport. Sabardic Psycho for 2 says, my fellow Glockers, is it over? It's not over. It's not doom and gloom. It's just, a bit of cowardice mixed with incompetence. And here we are. And the great Glock has now been, womaned up. Thank you. Glonk Respected for 2 says, all my homies hate future scholars. I mean, honestly, we shouldn't be mad at Glock, right? We should be mad at the future astronauts and scientists for getting Glock sued in every state imaginable. So I think that's really who we are. Oh, look, let's put the blame where it belongs, okay? The Lightsport for 2 says, fisting African king timing Candace Joy
You
Clip.
don't get to ask those questions. What's wrong with you, Mom? Why are you so scared?
Have you ever been feasted by an African king? It'll be me.
God damn it.
Unbelievable. Vandelay for 2 says, my streamer, the latest, his vibe, the gayest. True. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Cody Krager for 2 says, gate and lay. Very much so. Thank you, Cody Krager. Appreciate that, sir. Thank you for the 2. Joseph Mejia, Joseph Velvet for 5 says, BRB on my way to AIM SERP to stock up for the winter. Well, I have some numbers for you from a certain store selling an average of a Glock per 6 minutes. You heard that right. A Glock every 6 minutes today after this was announced. And there will be no more sold because no more exist in inventory to buy as a dealer. So good luck. Get them while they're here. Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate that, sir. Chud for 2 says, Gaston didn't die for this. Richard Gassy. I'm pretty sure he didn't die for the Richard Gassy either, Chud. Let's be real here. But thank you for that, Chud. I appreciate it, man.
Well, he may have.
Huge ass, member 4 months, says, Stronk and my glonk before the liberals snatch it away. That's true. The liberals came for my glonk. Actually, not wrong, though. Derek's horse cum collection for 2 says, the horse was promised me 3,000 years ago. Well, listen, I'm pretty sure you'd be happy to get your little hands all over that horse specimen. Thank you for that, Derek's horse cum collection. Noob Actual for 2 says, multiculturalism is worse than Christian multi-ethnicism. Yeah, there's always been multi-ethnic empires and nations and stuff like that, but this melting pot nonsense, has obviously led to where we are now, which is going to break apart slowly but surely. Thank you, Noob Actual. TK's Tiny Peen for 5 says, Trench Grenade is a human crawl space. $20 to get in. Check your local truck stop. Trench Grenade Lot Lizard? What? That's not true. No. I'm pretty sure Trench took the more, how do I say this, anti-2A approach with Glock and their moves. I don't really see their moves necessarily as anti-2A. I just think they're stupid, right? And it was totally unplanned and uncalled for. Huge ass for 5 says, this is what happens when a woman is CEO. Yeah, I think it's more accurately described as just a woman moment. Glock's, You know, it's autumn. They're showing their basic white girl nature. They got some pumpkin spice lattes. They're canceling all of their products. You know, just women moments. Thank you, huge ass. Tarkay for 2 says, FT, we still love you even if you're gay. Well, listen, the animal PFPs, I'm always like, maybe you would be a little too excited if I were, you know. So I'm like, I'm just skeptical. That's all. I'm not saying anything, Tarkay, but if it were true, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, that's all I'm saying. Ridiculous for 2 says, bought 2 panic glizzy because trench post. Hold me, John. Oh, I'll hold you. All right. You may not like it. Well, you gave me permission to actually. So, you know, don't go to the cops afterwards. Okay, ridiculous. But yeah, if you wanted a Gen 5, this is quite literally the only time you're ever going to get one. So, and I would imagine that prices are going to go up. Prices are going to go up. Matthew Dropco for 2 says, first they came for the Glocks, but I only owned CZs. Well, and it's not like Glock's going away. They are literally just bending to litigation pressure. I think that's the move. Thank you, Matthew. Rad's Arms for 5 says Glock loses a few of the lawsuits and precedent is set, and Glock files bankruptcy from business POV in a dead market. It makes sense. Well, so they're being sued, I think, in 4 states, successfully in some cases. They got kicked out of California, which is a big market, even though it's still gay. It still is a big gay market. So them discontinuing all of their Gen 5, Gen 3 products, which are quote unquote easily convertible with switches by young scientists into hood, is definitely preemptive. And I think they're trying to save themselves from future litigation because they already don't like what they're going through now. So I would imagine that they are going to just try and preempt that. We're not dealing with this anymore. We're canceling them all, and we're coming out with the Gen V, which is totally different and won't allow people to modify them in specific ways. Thank you, Rads. Noob Actual for 2 says, wait, Hitler isn't based in Christ-pilled? Well, no. If you look up on what Hitler believed, he was more Gnostic or pagan in a lot of ways, right? He wanted to disregard huge chunks of the Bible, which obviously you can't do. So
what the
thank you, New Background.
artist, the socialist artist, wasn't based Christian.
Derek's Horse Club Collection for 2 says my wife's boyfriend told me to get a cig anyways. I bet he did. Well, I've heard that Derek is a cigar lover, so that would actually kind of check out. Thank you, Derek's Horse Club Collection. Carver for 2 says, if I go down, I'm taking you with me. The 40 Smith & Wesson. Well, no, they're bringing out their new models. I'm pretty sure they're keeping their 40 models going forward with the Gen quote unquote V, unless I just interpreted the numbers wrong. So I think they're still going to be around.
Oh man, all the scholars are going to still be buying Glock 40s.
Well, what's the number, 23 or something like that?
Yeah, the 23 is the 19, but in 40.
All right. Well, hey, first story of the night. So FBI investigates hunting stand with sightline to Trump's Air Force One exit at Palm Beach Airport. Secret Service agents found suspicious elevated stand during advanced security preparations before Trump's arrival. And as you can see here from the footage, there is just a, can I skip to where it's actually at? Okay, fine, whatever. Your video sucks anyways.
To maintain law and order.
But you can see there's like a hunting tree stand in a tree that has line of sight to Air Force One, which to me is just ridiculous that they would even let somebody set something like this up, right? Where you would just have line of sight to the president's airplane at any point in time. That just seems crazy to me, right? The U.S. Secret Service uncovered a suspicious hunting stand with a direct line of sight to where President Donald Trump exits Air Force One at the Palm Beach International Airport. Agents found the stand on Friday, and FBI is now leading an investigation into the discovery. FBI Director Kash Patel, of course, our best and brightest are on the case, which means you know it's about to be blown wide open, or something else is getting blown. Said the hunting stand has not yet been connected to any individual. Prior to the president's return to West Beach Palm, USSS, Secret Service discovered what appeared to be an elevated hunting stand within sightline of Air Force One landing zone. Patel told Fox News Digital no individuals were located at the scene. The FBI has since taken an investigatory lead, flying in resources to collect all evidence from the scene and deploying our cell phone analytics capabilities. Now, what this means is that whoever set this up, if they had a cell phone on them, they'll be able to track exactly who it was, where he was, when he set it up, all that sort of fun stuff. Because your cell phone is a tracking device, either by the government or for advertising companies to sell you garbage. Now, this in and of itself isn't that surprising, right? That would be attempt number 3. It seems a little bit more elaborate than the golf course one, where it was just a retard with an SKS. This wouldn't seem slightly less retarded. So somebody who had, like, I suppose, a more complicated plan to actually get a tree stand and, you know, have an actual vantage point on the president, where he would be fairly vulnerable, right? Going up and down stairs, you're not going to be moving particularly quickly. Usually you stand and wave at people. So pretty easy, I suppose, if you were attempting to remove somebody. But I find that interesting in combination with rhetoric like this from Wilbur Wright. College staff member calls for people to get guns and shoot ICE agents. This is not out of context. Notice how no one in the Chicago crowd boos or reacts in any negative way. So with the No Kings protest, which is, all the mega gay retards gathering together for their different events or whatnot, and the ICE protests, like, internal temperatures in the U.S. are heating up, right? And we've already seen, Charlie Kirk's actual assassination, multiple assassination attempts on other people, and this is what the academics are pushing on young youths. Okay, let me refresh that real fast.
Grab a gun! We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system! These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out! You gotta grab a gun! We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system! These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out! You gotta grab a gun! We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system! These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out! You gotta grab a gun!
Explicit calls for violence from leftist agitators and academics. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? But it is that kind of rhetoric that makes things like this very, very believable. And not just upon, like, public figures, obviously the president of the United States, but right-wing talkers, streamers, violence against myself at some point by some of these leftist retards is never out of the question. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to the main topic, shall we? Hayden Harvey from 2 says operational industries is based Ephesians. Gotta type this out. Ephesians 9:9, which is. Oh, did I spell that wrong? Well, the book of Ephesians only has 6 chapters. Did you mean a different? I think you might have meant something else, because Ephesians only has 6 chapters, Hayden. So comment again if you typed the wrong Bible verse. Otherwise, I would look that up. But thank you, Hayden, for the 2. Just a Gun Guy for 2 says TX22 with an FRT is the new carry meta anyways. Yeah, you get one burst. You get one burst into your opponent. If you miss, well, that's too bad. If you hit, like, they are zipped up. Thank you, Just a Gun Guy. Joseph Velvets for 2 says, I grabbed a trade-in 40 to keep it away from YNs. All right, another one of those dangerous assault Glocks off the streets. Very, very tragic. Thank you, Joseph Magia. Chuck, member for 6 months, says Gen V is another fever dream like a Gen 3 fish scales. I don't think it's a fever dream. I think it's real, and I think it's coming very explicitly in the next month and a half. It's going to be here, whether you like it or not. Joseph Magia, Joseph Velvet, becomes a new channel member. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much. Rad's Arms for 2 says PSI appears to be gone. I wonder what happened. That's so strange. His account just disappeared, like he made it private after receiving paperwork from individuals. That's wild. I wonder why he did do that. Huh. Well, anyways, best of luck to PSI. He's gonna need it. Noob Actual for 5 says, is it actually gay to truly hate someone just because of color? I'm going hard tonight. Well, if that's the only thing, I think it's not gay, but it's incorrect if that's the only thing, right? So you have to hate them for the content of the character, right? Which is, this is why you shouldn't judge a group of people based upon how they all act, right? You just shouldn't do that. Just because they all act that way doesn't mean you can judge them as a whole, right? Like, this is just common sense, guys. It's just common sense. All right, thank you, Noob Actual. Amar over on Ko-Fi says, supporting the anti-PSI cause anonymously because I have libtard stalkers. Well, I probably shouldn't put out your name when you type that out, so that's actually my bad. I'm just a little retarded, so I will try and read before I speak. Vandalay over here on Ko-Fi says, can't believe that Gavin Newsom really force-launched the Gen 6. Maybe he really is a gun guy. Yeah. Maybe it was him all along. You never know. You never know. Acrid over on here became a Ko-Fi caffeine creep. Appreciate that. Bojangles also became a caffeine Ko-Fi creep. And the Mormon Pope says, for the war chest FPSI, he's an only child cuck, nothing more insufferable than some loser douche on a cancel crusade. Well, thank you, the Mormon Pope. I didn't know that Mormons had a pope, but I certainly take your word that you are the Mormon Pope. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah. Keener for 2 says, it's not all of them, but it's always them. You know, just sometimes. Sometimes. All right. Well, here, let's get to this. All right. So this is I've seen this reported from multiple places. Glock Store, Lipsies, all the big distributors are kind of saying the same thing. Talking to people who also work in the industry, they're like, yeah, we knew that something was coming. We didn't know exactly what, but something was coming. And unfortunately, it was this. So, huge news. We have received news that as of November 30th, all Glocks are discontinued except for the 43, 43X, and 48X. Now, they are not joking. That means every other model of Gen 3, 4, and 5 that were still in production are gone as of November 30th. They are gone. They are completely gone. Done. Finito. It's over. All Glocks will be replaced with Glock V models. Now, of course, that's just for naming to say the same thing, because they will essentially be Gen 5 Glocks with a couple of internal changes to not allow use to take them from semi-auto to something else. These will have changes that prevent switch conversions at launch. All will be non-MOS. This is also very annoying.
Why would they do that?
Well, we'll get into it. The launch models, they will have no MOS versions outside of their 40 cal and 45 caliber counterparts. I don't know why they would do that. I have no idea why they would launch their new Gen Vs, which are going to have updated triggers, updated backplate designs, updated slide geometry so that you can't just put in a different backplate and get them to go full auto, right? I don't know why they would not have a single MOS. So if you buy a Gen V day one, you are going to be sending them directly off to somebody to get them optics cut, which sucks. Super annoying. All right. Update. We've been able to confirm through a leaked image that a new Glock 19C model will be released under the new Glock V line. It appears C models are back on. Now, C models, if you're not familiar, those are the ported / comped. They're ports. They're ported variants of their standard models. So 17C, 19C, and a few other models are out there, I'm sure. So one tiny little silver lining is that it does appear that we're going to be getting some new ported Gen Vs, right? Which is something. It's not much, but it's something, right? Now, another update from Glocksource says that we've been told, in addition to the V models, an entirely new, meaning Gen 6, Glock model is coming soon. We expect the long speculated model that has a FCU and modular grip concept. Nothing confirmed, coming soon, apparently. Now, Gen 6, if I had to guess, was probably originally slated for sometime next year. At some point. Maybe they will show off a finished gun at SHOT Show and be like, hey, coming 2026, right? Or early 2027, something in that range. However, due to recent litigation losses being banned from the state of California, they decided to go ahead and push through an update called the Gen V, which will change the trigger, which will change the slide and backplate to not allow you to insert a switch, right? That converts it from a semi-auto to something a little bit quicker, which again, we're not even talking about good, bad, whether that's based or cringe. It's cringe, of course, but from a financial perspective, if they're trying to get away from future litigation that their guns are quote unquote readily convertible, that's language that could get them banned nationwide. So if they're trying to preempt all of that, right? A 2028 changing of the guard, if you have a Democrat in power, right? Somebody who's going to go after stuff like this, I think they're trying to preempt all of that. And so they are definitely going to be taking a short-term hit in terms of sales. Well, they'll get a boost right now, right? Because they're going to sell every single Gen 5 that they have in stock. And then the Gen Vs will sell because they're Glocks. But they would almost certainly rather just keep selling Gen 5s to everybody rather than pushing through these silly little updates. And then the Gen 6 will come around and probably also be slightly updated from what it was originally supposed to be. Let me see here. So here is the man, the myth, the legend himself. Can we have audio? Here we go.
News. It's shocking news, as I just heard this from a very reliable source, that as of November 30th, Glock is going to discontinue all models, Gen 3, 4, 5, everything except for the slimline guns, are going to be discontinued and replaced with what they call the new V model, Glock Model V. Pretty crazy, right? Now, Glock says this is all about an improved trigger and improved slide, but the reality of it is these changes will prevent the Glock from accepting a switch that will convert it to full auto. And I've got breaking news. It's shocking news.
Yeah, so we'll get into more details here in a second, but they have updated the grips, they've updated the triggers and the slides and whatever it is. So they are essentially still going to be Gen 5 with less parts compatibility, because something that they have explicitly stated is that these will not accept current triggers, which is a problem because all of your current Glocks on the market, they accept a wide variety of aftermarket parts, that being triggers. There are companies around like Johnny Glocks and a few other guys who literally only exist to make Glock triggers. You have all of the new, like the Trigger Tech Ace and some of the other new triggers on the market that will not be compatible with the new Glocks. So everything is going to have to be updated and changed. And yeah, all the Glocks you want, no MOS. Sorry, guys, at least at launch, right? 2026, you're definitely going to be seeing some MOS models, but it's just so obnoxious that the new Gen Vs are not going to just only be MOS. Because in my opinion, just make them only MOS and that's it, right? We will talk about this, but please remind me, Richard, write this down somewhere, that I need to talk about the Ruger RXM and the PSA Dagger, because I don't think they're going to be around for much longer. I'd be worried about it. I'd be very worried about it if I were those guys. If Glock is caving, I would say your head is on the chopping block next. All right. Ben Steger posts the same thing. So, yep, on November 30th, and this is from Lipsy's, a huge Glock distributor. On November 30th, Glock will stop shipments on all Gen 3, Gen 5, Gen 5 MOS Glocks. The slimline Glocks will remain. And in December 2025, right? So hopefully there's no gap in supply, even though from what I've heard, Gen 5 Glocks are already gone. Like, If you find one at your local LGS and you want one, you should probably just buy one. They will almost certainly be gone before November 30th. So if there's a specific model, if you wanted a Gen 5 47, which are already hard to find, you find one in stock for a decent price, I would just grab it. I would just grab it. And that's if you want one, right? If you're not looking for a Glock like me, then I'm not doing anything because I don't need one. So in December 2025, Glock will begin shipping V-Series. Pricing will be consistent with current Gen 5 structure. So there's no price updates, which I guess is nice. So you'll have a 17, a 19, a 23, a 23 MOS, which is what? A 23 is a 40, right? Or is it 45?
The 23 is the 40.
23 is a 40. So you can get a 40 MOS, a 45, 19X, 20 MOS, 21 MOS. So I think those are 10 and 45 or something like that. Either way,
assuming the barrels are the same, the thing to do would be to get the 23 MOS and then get the 9mm conversion barrel for it.
Yeah, but at that point, it's the same price just to get your slide optics cut. So, I mean, I don't know if it matters that much. And then, of course, 26 and 44. Now,
You can get
changes
conversion barrels for under $100.
Right. Changes to V-Series include internal slide and trigger quote-unquote improvements. Now, I don't know what they mean by improvements, if it's actually going to be better. Current Glock performance triggers will not function in the V-Series models. All current models retain MTP, MAP through end of year and will be on sale. Now, that's important because if they are, because one of the problems with California was the cruciform style trigger and the back plate that could be swapped out to make them, of course, more than semi-automatic, which is problematic, right? So if they are not compatible with aftermarket parts, you're going to have to see companies scramble to get out all your standard like trigger upgrades or whatever other internal upgrades people put in their guns, because of course they are changing and we don't know how they are changing yet. So, and I don't know how forthcoming Glock is going to be working with a lot of these individuals. Now over here, they show exactly the pricing list. So the Glock 17V model, so that's they're all 475 roughly base, and then 580, 550 retail map. So depending on where you get them from, pricing hasn't changed, but unfortunately, you're just not going to get any of the models that you want. Yeah, you can get if you're into 40, you can get a 40 MOS and get a conversion barrel. But I mean, I don't think conversion barrels are a great option for anything, rifles, pistols, anything like that. Maybe for a couple people out there, it makes sense. But that's assuming that there's no slide geometry changes that stop 40 conversion barrels from working in your Gen Vs, which we don't know. We have no idea. It is all, unfortunately, speculation. All right, so somebody that I know that was working at a gun store today, they sold every Glock that they had in inventory, I want to say, which was 68 Glocks in about 6 or 7 hours, which I believe is selling a Glock every 6 minutes. So they, at a relatively large store, they sold out of their Glock inventory, again, at a rate of 1 Glock per 6 minutes being sold. So if you're somebody who was looking to get one, if you've been holding off, if you've been eyeing a 47 or whatever model it might be, good luck, because my guess, my big brain guess would be that they are about to go up in price. That would be my guess. All right, Hayden Harvey for 2 says, I'm retarded. Ecclesiastes 9:9. Okay. I thought that's might be what you meant. Ecclesiastes 9:9 is, live joyfully with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life, which she has given you under the sun, all your days of vanity, for that is your portion in life and in the labor which you perform under the sun. Yeah, Ecclesiastes is a fun book. But yeah, I agree. Thank you, Hayden Harvey. Appreciate that, man. Spencer Porter for $10. Thank you, sir. Says, got to sweat a couple pounds off. Got to meet weight requirements tomorrow. Also, PSI, big gay. Well, hey, good luck with that, Spencer. I don't know what you're trying to meet weight requirements for, if it's like sports or military or something like that. But yeah, get after it, man. Do a sauna, do a water fast for a little while. You'll get there. Thank you, Spencer. Ridiculous for two says, real talk though, switches should be legal. YNs or not. Well, of course, right? We all understand that like that would be cool if they were all legal all the time for everybody. We get that, right? But it's just I can't change the world in which we live in. You know, it's like try and tell the ATF officer that's arresting you, like, actually, sir, this is part of my God-given rights. And he's going to be like, yeah. Where's that dog? Can I go shoot that dog? What's going on? Oh, also, something I did want to mention real fast is when it comes to the alternatives, right? When it comes to your shadow systems, when it comes to your Ruger RXMs, when it comes to your PSA daggers, right? It's important to remember that Glock is doing this because they were getting sued, not because of some sort of lefty, quote unquote, gun safety measure that they were really concerned about. Glock is only doing this because they were getting sued, they were getting removed from markets, and they, were foreseeing future litigation or a world in which they were not being allowed to be sold. So them making updates kind of makes sense, right? However, now that Glock is moving away, now that they are updating their systems to be quote unquote compliant, well, that leaves Ruger, PSA, Shadow Systems, Lone Wolf, and every other current Gen 3 cloner on the market. Well, now they're the biggest target for litigation. So good luck, I guess. Glock's got a lot of money. Glock dwarfs probably all of those companies in terms of sales outside of maybe PSA. But I don't know how much any of those other companies want to get wrapped up in litigation with states and cities and all this other fun stuff, because all those other guns are just as readily convertible as a Glock is. And Glock is moving away. So I could see a world in which, in not too far, we have no Gen 3 clones left on the market.
Yeah, and Glock would be happy to have that happen.
Glock would be happy to have that happen. And Zev's another one. Zev, no. If they accept a backplate and they use a cruciform style trigger just like a Glock, no. Now, some of them might be, right? Because Zev has some of their whatever their FCU guns. So that I'm actually not sure about. Maybe their older ones aren't, but their newer ones are. That's actually a good question. So I'd have to check up on somebody who knows Zev stuff, which isn't me. Now, yeah. So if that is the standard, if Glock is abandoning that market and they are internally adjusting their products to move to try and preempt, right, future litigation, to mitigate that, to get away from that, the litigators are still going to go after it, right? And to be honest, it would be a double whammy to the YNs if PSA daggers and Glock Gen 3s got taken off the market, right? Because the PSA daggers are relatively cheap and they seem like crime scene fodder to me. So yeah. Josh asking the important questions. Is Catherine Glock single? That's the real question. She might be. I don't know if she's single and ready to mingle though. She might be your type though. Certified woman moment. Now, of course, I don't actually know if it was like Catherine Glock's decision, but I do think that this was a cost benefit analysis of like, okay, we have the Gen 6 coming out like next year at some point. We have all these Gen 5 guns. We're getting sued because of it. So why don't we redesign the backplate and the trigger to where they can no longer accept a switch, and we will just cancel all Gen 3, all Gen 5 products, which is wild, right? I would have, if you told me like 3 days ago, like, dude, I think Glock is going to get rid of all their Gen 5 Glocks, I'd be like, no, of course not. They're still making Gen 3 Glocks. Like, why would they get rid of Gen 5 Glocks on a whim, like just like that? But apparently they did. So I don't think that this was a calculated move. I don't think that this was planned a decade in advance. I don't think that this was, I think this was, spur of the moment. Essentially, after a few months of deliberation, after losing some litigation, after getting kicked out of California, they were like, well, what do we do? And then legal team and their designers were like, well, I mean, we can take all the Gen 5s that we are making and just like do like 2 or 3 updates. It's going to ruin the aftermarket. Now, somebody in chat asked, what about current aftermarket support? Well, it's important to remember there are still millions and millions of Gen 3, 4, and 5 Glocks in circulation. So the aftermarket support is not going to disappear, but it's not going to have the same momentum as new Glocks, right? Especially if the parts are not compatible, right? So if Gen V triggers are not compatible with Gen 5 triggers and Gen 3 triggers, so on and so forth, then there's going to be less motivation to continue to support a dead platform. Now, that being said, you're almost certainly going to get support for like a decade at least, because there's just by volume, there are so many of them in existence. However, I think that over time, you will see support, aftermarket parts, all of that sort of momentum switch into the new Gen V and possibly Gen 6, right, next year. And again, I think you're still going to get support, but it's just not going to be as much. It is unfortunate and absolutely wild. What a strange move. I never would have guessed, but here we are.
I think Shadow Force, I believe you're incorrect there. I believe Gen 3 has still been in production specifically for the California market.
The Gen 3 was still in production. Yes, they were actually still making brand new Gen 3 parts.
Yeah, they were still rolling off the line as of, like a week ago.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there might have been like a little update to them or something like that. But it appears now that they're just all gone. I'm just checking. That's funny. All right, I'm just checking first to make sure that no new updates were out on that. But yeah, it appears that Glock is switching gears, which is crazy because Glock has been like the most consistently boring company for the last 30 years. But now they're just completely switching gears, and best of luck to them. I mean, I'm still relatively interested in their 2-piece frames and FCU guns coming next year. I hope they're good. Now, if they are forced to rush things to market, I could see them pulling a Sig Sauer, right? Where their new Gen 6 guns that are rushed to market to fill a gap because they need a hot new product to sell, basically. That could cause a lot of problems. Militaristic says, Focus Group, did they break all their sales agreements for the military and law enforcement contracts worldwide? No. I doubt that very much. But they did for all the civilians, right? For us. Because I guarantee you, they still have to maintain a certain level of internal production of Gen 5s, Gen 3s, and specific parts for contracts, but not for anybody else, right? So going forward, no more contracts for them. So for you and I, it might as well be they're not making them. But for a few contracts that are in place with militaries and police from around the world, they will still be getting their Gen 5 and Gen 3 Glocks. That would be my guess, right? Because those aren't at risk for litigation, right? If they're selling Glock 23s to Brazil, like they don't care about the litigation in California. That doesn't affect them at all, right? No one you know of for 2 says Napa's always ruining stuff. I mean, it's a combination of things. It is a combination of liberal cities and DAs going after them. Because again, I think they've been sued by 4 states and a half dozen cities successfully in some cases. They're banned in California now, which is probably still the biggest or second biggest market in the US for handguns, right? Even with how gay they are, it still is probably at least a top 5 market for handguns. So them trying to get around all of that and trying to boost their sales, like it makes sense from a business perspective. Randy Reviews It for 5 says, what sucks is Gen 5 videos coming out Saturday where I praise the Gen 5. So yeah, sorry about that. Well, Randy, you lucked out because earlier this month you bought 5 Gen 5 Glocks. So you actually hit the lottery there pretty much. That was a good investment. Thank you, Randy. Deer Hunter for $20. Thank you very much, sir. That is insanely generous. And you have been insanely generous this entire time. Says hello, goodbye, and God bless. Well, God bless you too. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Everyday American for 5 says there was a new 43X that came out direct cut for the K footprint. I wonder if that is going to be the standard going forward, direct cut for optics. Actually, that's a really good point. I don't know if they are continuing to make the Koa models. I have heard nothing about that. What happened to the Koa models? Are they gone? Are they discontinued? Are we also getting Gen 5 Koas? Has anybody heard anything about the Koa models at all?
Well, they specified no MOS, so I'm wondering if
but
they
the
will
MOS
be offering
is
Koa.
Well, right, but they're not specifying Koa either. I would hope they had the Koa models because the Koa is the A cut or whatever they call it. I mean, I would, what about all the Koa models? Where are they gone? Well, that's actually a good point too. We had heard earlier that the Koa models were like sold out outside of Ellie and Mill for the rest of the year. So maybe Koa models coming back 2026 for the Gen 6, not for the Gen V, but for the Gen 6. Never know. Aimpoint couldn't keep up. Possible, but hey, they just need another manufacturer to make A cut. Like make Trijicon. If you want to go high end, make Trijicon, make an A cut optic for you. An RCR, but Trijicon, basically. Or sorry, but A cut, sorry. yeah, okay, yeah. So, but surely they have to be bringing them back to the civilian market at some point. Surely. You would hope anyways. Mitzvot for 2 says, panic buying a Gen 5 Glocks proved to be justified. Yeah, actually. No, listen, guys, I'm pretty sure half you people, if you want one, you should go and get one before the week is out, because it is going to be complicated after that. So there's going to be some boomer on tax swap being $1,200 for my new unfired Gen 5 47. Okay, I know what I got. They don't make these anymore. This is a legacy model right here.
I've got a guy who's got a Gen 2 I might buy.
You can buy a Gen 2 at any time. John New Island for 5 says California releasing non-violent felons. Non-violent. Yeah, you should look at what they consider non-violent. You can get away with a lot of violence and still be released as a non-violent felon.
And one of the 6-year-old in the head.
Yeah, non-violently. And one of those YN felons committing Sacramento's biggest mass shooting. Then the Glock ban came afterwards. Well, I think that's actually really efficient when you think about it, because if your point is to cause chaos and do damage to your political opponents, you simply allow criminals to continue to do their crime. You release them into the public, and then when they commit more crimes, you then use that to punish your opposition, right? To push for gun control or societal changes, right? Because these people, these criminals, as they're called, are actually just tools to use against your opponents, right? You allow them to commit crimes so that you can say, oh, we need to push for reparations, because we had reparations, they wouldn't be doing this. If we just got rid of all the guns, they wouldn't be doing this. If we just had better health care, they wouldn't be doing this. And it's like, you know what? If they were dead or in jail, they wouldn't be doing this. How about that? How about that? Thank you, John New Island. I agree. The Lightsport for 2 says the 13th Amendment has consequences. Whoa. That's okay. I got enough trouble for saying the 19th Amendment was problematic. I feel like I'd get at least 60% more pushback on the 13th Amendment. 3/5 more. Ridiculous for 2 says the Gen V lineup posted on Glizzy subreddit. Some MOS. Yeah, the MOS models are the 40 and 45 versions. So it's not particularly interesting. To me, anyways. Thank you, Ridiculous, for 2. Aaron Keenar for 5 says, a moment of silence for all the smoke detector suffering. Crazy that 9-volt batteries are never locked up or out of stock in certain neighborhoods. What's a 9-volt battery? Oh, my gosh. Oh, that was a little hot. Thank you, Aaron. Sabardic Psycho for 5 says, no more super chats after this, John. Apparently, I need to save my cash for panic buying Glocks. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you should probably, if you want one or you want a backup gun or a specific model you don't have yet, I would buy it now rather than later. It's only going to get more expensive. Thank you, Sabardic. Everyday American for 2 says, Shadow Systems hiding in the shadows. Well, Shadow Systems is also banned from California. And I think, according to a video I watched from Reno, they are working on a couple different changes, which might end up being very similar to the Gen V changes from Glock, right? But kind of working on the same thing separately. How do we change our trigger to where they're no longer allowed to accept a switch? And I think that if they do that, they will probably also import that to all their models to secure them against future litigation from retarded DAs and specific states and cities. Right?
It seems like they could just change the back the slide geometry for the back plate. Could they not? Like put a
not just that they should. Yeah, that would work. Yeah, just completely rechange the design. But for California as well, it's anything with a cruciform style trigger. So they actually have to change the trigger mechanism.
Wow.
For that market. Not now the switch thing, yes, that would work for the switches in different states, but for California, they also have to change the trigger bar. Ridiculous for 2 says 3D printer go burr, get it in before China tariffs. Well, listen, dude, if you can't afford a $11.99 switch from AliExpress, I don't know if you need to buy a $200 3D printer to do the same thing. Right? I mean, because that's the problem. They imported like
saying that you buy the printer so you can just print all of the Gen 3 switches or all of the Gen 3 frames that you want.
That's a Freudian slip right there, Richard.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying print the switches; they fail.
All right, I take your word for it. I would never personally.
No, I've seen plenty of videos where people are trying it and they just.
Well, people posting videos of them doing stuff like that, it's just so retarded, dude.
It's wild. It's like, wow, you didn't even black out the serial numbers. You didn't even put a light over it. I can still see all of that.
And Normal Thoughts for 2 says, and then no one buys them? ? Well, no, I think people will still buy them. Now, I've heard some people take the anti-2A approach to it. Actually, let me pull up Trench's video real fast. Because I know you guys love Trench Grenade on this channel, so I will make you watch his take on it all.
I like to wear one around my neck because I'm gay.
As punishment, you guys get to watch Trench Grenade's video. That's what you get. That's what you get for supporting this channel.
Have Glock taking the Sig Sauer Walk of Shame home on your 2025 bingo card. Then go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, guys. Welcome back to the Trench Grenade channel. Today,
go give it a like, and I'm putting it in the chat. And you need to say something nice. You need to say nice. No, Arrow, this is on you. This is on you, dude. This is on you. Where are you? There you go. Yeah, this is your fault, Arrow.
Today we're going to be discussing the crash out of Glock, or as I like to call it, Glock bending the knee. Now, before all the Glock fanboys jump into the comment section and say that I'm being unfair to Glock, or I'm targeting Glock, or attacking Glock, and that this is a nothing burger, this is important information that everyone needs to be made aware of. And keep in mind, as a Glock fanboy, as many of you probably are, I am also a Glock fanboy, but when the Glock makes mistakes, I am going to evaluate them in the exact same manner and be critical of them in the exact same manner as I have been of Sig Sauer, of Beretta, and every other gun company that we cover here on the channel. So before you freak out, make sure you educate yourself on the whole situation and make an educated assessment of what is actually going on. If you want to support the channel, hit the like button and leave your combat llama emojis down below and let me know, is Glock in the wrong for this? And let's get into the news. If you've been living under a rock, on August 19th, 2025, Glock signed a letter to the chairman of public safety in Oklahoma supporting gun control legislation, anti-2A legislation. They
Right. So I think what he's referencing there is the letter that they stated in support of banning Glock switches, which is stupid because Glock switches are already banned. They are already illegal. You do not need to. You do. Sorry, I'm reading a Ko-fi somebody said. You guys are unbelievable. But yeah, you do not need to write more litigation or more laws, right? Or more support for more laws against something that's already illegal, right? Completely wasted. Waste of time. Stupid.
Did you hear
And it makes you look
the
bad.
new letter that Glock sent to Congress?
No, was it sealed with horse scum? No, I did not.
No. They asked Congress to outlaw murder.
Oh yeah, that's the next thing that they should do. That's a good point.
Glock signed this legislation under the control of machine gun conversion devices, i.e., their Glock Gen 3 pistol falls directly in line with this, thus leading to further legislation on the Glock Gen 3 handgun. Now, after they signed with this anti-2A legislation, a lot of you were very upset. But what happened after this? Well, AB 1127, a legislation.
Okay. Let me grab this real fast. Randy just sent this to me, which is actually, I saw this, but I didn't read far enough into it to think this would be important. So, quoted from someone on Instagram who said they spoke to a Glock tech, so very reliable info. I'm not sure on the amount of parts, but he did state that the new design was designed with more interchangeability between the Gen V versus something else to be better than previous generations. He also said that the overall look of the Gen V will be no different other than a V being where the 5 was beside the Gen stamp on the slide. I expressed reliability being my main concern with the new features, and he said that it should be no different, and if not better than previous models. Press X to doubt. I guess we'll have to see in time if that statement holds true or not, but he did explicitly say that you will not be able to use a Gen 5 frame or slide on a Gen V frame or slide. The only thing that would be interchangeable between the V and the previous generation is the barrel and magazines. Nothing else. Nothing else. That's the only interchangeable parts between a Gen V and a Gen 5 is the barrel and magazines. I mean, probably the sights, but if they're different sights too, like that would not make people happy at all. No, they come with 10 rounds and 20 rounds. We have that listed. Where do I have that picture? I have it somewhere around here. Did I change it? I might have changed it.
He's been spamming that. I think he was just trolling.
Yeah. The models that they have are 10 and 20 rounders. Or so 10 and standard, right? They have a compliant version and regular version.
Got me excited.
Legislation in California covering machine gun convertible pistols have been and will be banned on January 1st, 2026. What does that mean? That means if you're living in California, you will no longer be legally allowed to own a Glock pistol or a...
Now, that's something that I hadn't really considered, is that the ban in California doesn't go into effect until January 1st, which means that if they can get Gen V out ahead of time, that means that they can actually kind of get around the ban if it gets accepted, because to get reaccepted in California, they just need to make the noted changes, not go through the whole acceptance process to get on the California roster. So it is possible that there will actually not be any interruption of Glock sales to California, which might be why they're pushing this so fast, right? Yeah, everybody says this. Everybody says, who cares about California? You should move out of California. You shouldn't live there. And I'm telling you guys, it's one of the biggest markets in the US, right? It's one of the biggest markets in the US.
They are also the canary in the coal mine.
I get what you mean by that, but yeah, I just think they're a huge market. So that's why companies want to be on the California roster. That's why Glock maintained their Gen 3, because it was still on the California roster, right?
Glock Gen 3 in California. The exemptions of this, of course, are military and law enforcement. Now, keep in mind, my channel does not represent the Department of War or the United States Army in any way.
If you could get me one of the new Bad Apple monsters, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. That whole thing will take effect on 1 January 2026. At the same time that all of this has gone down, Chicago.
I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, if you want to look to the future of the nation, just look to California, and they're about 20 years ahead of everyone else. Now, what's funny is that was before mass amnesty programs that completely ruined California and many other states. So thanks for that, Ronald, and many other things that you did. But yeah, I think California is, if you want to see everywhere else in 10 to 20 years, just look at California.
Is suing Glock for the ability to be able to utilize a Glock switch on their pistol. Now, a lot of you guys are like, Trench, we knew all this. There's a lot of stuff that Glock has done wrong recently. What is the recent update? Why am I making this video? Well, now from Glock store, they are reporting this from Glock. Now all Glocks.
Well, listen up, liberal. Triples the national debt, yeah. Amnesty programs. 1986 Gun Control Act. Take that, liberals.
Will be canceled as of November 30th to exclude the Glock 43, Glock 43X, and Glock 48. And they will be announcing the Glock V, Glock 5 model that will prevent conversions or machine gun pistol conversion devices. Now, they will not alter the price.
RC, a script wouldn't kill Trench, but it wouldn't be of any use to Trench. Now, would it?
They will not have the MOS version available at launch. And all of this is coming from the MMTC, very base, no book of truth, or just my notes on the back side of it. Now, why is all this important? This appears on the surface that Glock is bending the knee to Chicago, to California, and to the federal government and siding with anti-Second Amendment legislation. Now, a lot of Glock fanboys are not going to be able to see the truth in the matter of this. That is the reality that Glock is failing in the social media department, failing in the marketing department. This doesn't look good.
Now, I will say that this is nowhere near as bad of like a negative backlash as SIG's It Ends Today post, because that meme has just continued to keep going. For me, it's not that I'm upset at them bending the knee or changing their guns, right? Because, I mean, that's one of the complaints, is that they don't change their guns enough. But it does seem like this is going to set precedent in terms of all striker-fired handguns that can readily accept a switch device or similar. And if it becomes, like, think about it, if it becomes a problem with Canucks or Smith & Wessons or Walthers or PDP, or that said the same thing, or SIGs, right? If there comes a time where there are devices that are easily imported or easily installed to switch them from semi-auto to faster than semi-auto, I mean, then these states and these cities and these DAs, seems like you are kind of bending the knee and setting precedent that these people can come after you for these designs. So maybe a lot of the designs, maybe a lot of the guns that we currently see on the market will undergo changes in the next 5 to 10 years. Well, and that's another thing. Like, the internet is still going to make an FRT for it. Like, there's no way around it. Like, FRT everything is just the nature of the beast. Like, it's not possible to get people to stop doing that. But I think specifically in this case, it was the readily convertible. Which, I mean, ARs are technically readily convertible. It's a one-part swap, right? There's like 100 different ways to get an AR to go full auto. So, I mean, by that logic, like, they should be able to sue a lot of different companies.
This will make your current existing Glock pistols skyrocket in price on, third-party sites, and this will also lead to a lot of people having questions regarding Glock's loyalty. Where do they lie? Where does their loyalty lie? And it clearly doesn't look like their loyalty lies to the Second Amendment or to the United States civilian.
No, I know I'm saying the quiet part out loud, but listen, like, we give them crap for being retarded and stupid and evil and all the things, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that they have very smart, very evil people, and they are trying to get some of this litigation through to set precedent for other systems. I guarantee you, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And Glock is already preemptively giving up, right? Now, it might be a wise financial decision for them to preemptively give up, but I think that they are doing that.
Million population in regards to personal protection, home defense, or anything like that, because their MOS models will all be canceled. Obviously, they're saying the price won't change, but if you're changing every gun, that when it's been manufactured and modeled a certain way, when you're changing that to
Well, Brian, I totally get it. And there was a time where only a couple hundred people would watch and it'd be really chill and I would just have a conversation the whole time and it was great, right? But that being said, I'm not going to abandon people who support me. Of course not. Of course not. Right? They're supporters. They keep the show going. They support me and my family. Of course I'm going to give them their time. Of course.
prevent the modification of a fully automatic machine gun pistol device, it doesn't look good. Anytime you modify a safe action pistol or a striker fired pistol from its original design to something knee-jerk and brand new, there are going to be massive issues with that design. That is my prediction for this anyway. So let me know down below. What are your thoughts on Glock?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this earlier, but yeah, just randomly change, or not randomly, but rushing something to market, changing all of the parts, like according to this, almost all of the parts, right? I don't think that's a great idea. I don't think that's a great idea. All right. Everyday American says, for two, says, how has 40 survived through this? Well, 40 never dies. That's the thing. 40 is just, it's the best caliber of all time, right? Maybe
Is that
Hunt was
one
right.
way of saying black don't crack?
I never said that. I didn't say that. Josh for 5 says, I would crawl through a mile of broken beer bottles to see Catherine Glock's sweaty feet, but until then, Jake's dogs will have to do. So true, King. So true, Josh. Definitely not horny posting on Maine. Central Sands Defense for 5 says the whole "we're not selling 45s anymore" post from a while back makes more sense now. Yeah, I didn't see, were 45s on the new roster? 45s are on the new roster, so you'll get a 45V, but not a 45.5. Mitzvot, hope you're having a good night, Ben. Mitzvot for 2 says, this is what happens when a woman runs the company. Yes, let's just blame the woman. That's honestly, that's the simplest thing to do, and it's the funniest thing to do, so I say just blame the woman. Whether it's true or not, it's funny, right? Everyday American for 5 says, as a Glock guy, I'm kind of excited to see what comes out. This isn't how we want their innovation to start, but hopefully something cool comes out of it. I mean, that's like a glass half full type of guy where you're like, well, this is lame and stupid financially, and they're giving up, you know, on their tried and true design, but hopefully something good comes out the other side, right? That's like the glass half full kind of dude, which I can respect that in a way. Thank you, Everyday American. Barva 662 for 5 says, people who complain that Glock never innovates are the same ones who are screeching about Glock being anti-gun when they finally innovate. Insanity. Well, I think that you got two things tied together there. They're not being anti-gun. Glock is obviously pro-gun. They want to sell as many guns as possible while settling as few lawsuits as possible. So they are caving to the gun control crowd and litigators while trying to rebrand Gen 5 into Gen V so that they can continue to sell more guns, right? So I can see why people are upset at them for giving up, but at the same time, as a business that does not care about you, the individual, I can absolutely see that it makes sense to just try and rebrand, right, and get around the litigation.
Caving to the anti-gunners also sets precedent, which will put their competitors out of business, which will then force Glock people to buy more Gen Vs.
It could actually, hurt. I think it will hurt every other current Gen 3 cloner on the market and make them change their design. And I think Glock is actually
get
first.
One at a time, then they can't fight it.
Lightspore over on Ko-Fi says, I miss the Discord and all the fun times, like Barnes calling Amar a sand Niger. This has caused me emotional stress and needs to be said in court. True. I'll get that read in court for you. Subartic Psycho over on Ko-Fi says, Fago's Jew-ish commie judges and lawyers attacking the gun industry is an attack on the gun owner. You, Christian white man. I'm angry as crap. I understand, Sabardic. Keep that rage. Who's that guy who always says stay angry at the end of his videos? I forget, but yeah, stay angry. Gavin Newsom, Glocks, cock for 3 says California is supremely homosexual and deserves to fall into the ocean. All right. Nig Bigger for 69. Says long time listener, first time catching the live stream. Here's some cheddar for the war chest. I'm doing my part. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bigger. Art Vandalay on Ko-Fi says, I watched the stream while filling in my 2-month-old daughter on what's going on. Yeah, keep her up to date, okay? She needs an update. She told me that panic buying, the world's most common handgun, is almost as brain dead as PSI. Panic buying a Glock Gen 5. I mean, I get what you mean because there are literally millions of them, but at the same time, they will be in people's hands and not on store shelves. So, Twench Grenade over on Ko-Fi says, if you saw me being a gigantic fagot for views and likes, please hit the subscribe button and make sure to asphyxiate yourself. Hey, be nice. Be nice to Trench. Trench put out a good video, and he's not wrong about it. Podnamic 147 says, is there a way to support Brassfax as well in these Discord banning times, or did he get his back yet? See y'all in the VOD. Well, hey, you have a good night, Podnamic. Pod and Ammo Co. 147. I have no idea how to pronounce your name, but as far as I know, Brass is not taking any action on his part, though we haven't talked extensively about it. We've talked about it exactly one time, so I'm not sure if he plans on doing something in the future or just kind of letting it sit where it stands. Moonman says, I arrived to see this absolute Thalmor on my screen. Richard, racist anime girl of your choosing. I'm feeling generous. Well, hey, thank you, Moonman. Hope you're having a good night, sir. Don Dogs for 2 says, shut it down and start pepper spray gun production. Pepper spray guns? The ones that look like guns, but they're just pepper spray? Joseph Mejia for 2 says, that face when we can't make clone correct Gen 5s anymore. Well, I mean, I imagine that the Gen Vs are gonna look identical other than the markings. Right, so they'll still look the same. Charles, Chuck for 2 says Glock does do direct milled MOS 7, MOS 5, MOS 6, etc. Well, but they won't be like your normie LGS won't have them, right? Or you'll have to like special order them. But from what we've seen, their new models, at least at launch, will not have MOS patterned slides, which is disgusting and retarded. Chud for 2 says Glock 19 Gen 3 for 500 brand new, and what dot for it? Well, the Vortex Defender XL is probably a pretty good one. I have a new one that actually got back from Vortex warranty pretty fast. Clean dot looks good. Has a MOS plate in the box for like $300. It's not a bad deal, so I'd probably take a look at that, honestly. Thank you, Chud. Tark for 5 says, been waiting for a 34 for a while. Gen 4 superior to Gen 5 in this case? Question mark. No, I would say the Gen 5 is always superior to a Gen 4, but that's not saying that Gen 4 is bad. I would just always go with a Gen 5 over a Gen 4 personally. Thank you, Tark. Moonman for 2 says, Trenchatard, the last Glock bender. No. There are many Glock benders, all right? Many such cases. Thank you, Moonman. Axefire, no, for 2 says, is this going to affect the Hellcats? Well, didn't they ban Charger? Or not ban. Didn't they say they're discontinuing Charger pretty soon? I'm pretty sure that also hit the Napa community very hard. Thank you, Axefire. 220 Swift based case for 2 says, do they go after AR manufacturers because of FRTs? If they're using the readily convertible argument, maybe it's possible. Maybe it is possible. You never know. You know, I mean, if they're going to use that same line of arguments, it is possible. Vandalay for 5 says, nice comment about Trench. I think he has done great things for the enlisted LGBT community by being a trailblazer and a role model. Yes, a very, a very powerful black trans woman. Sorry. Huge Ass for 5 said Twench Grenade needs to hold his breath indefinitely. That's not very nice, Mr. Jass. Thank you for the 5, sir. Moonman says, do not move out of California, based. California refugees, much like real refugees, based, are either bad actors or cowards. Nobody wants you. Stay there. True. I think we should build a wall around California and just pretend that it's keeping them safe from everyone else. I think that's fair. Everyday American for 2 says, this dude's voice is so annoying. It's a little raspy. But listen, when you yell at dudes for 6 hours a day, your voice gets a little raspy. Right? Just what it comes, and among other activities. Tulip 382 for 5 says, did Trench say at launch or at lunch? The world will never know. Well, listen, as somebody who is also pretty retarded when it comes to speaking, I do identify with the wetards. 382 for 10 says, only one of the big 5 distributors has any Gen 5 MOS in stock, and the only model they have are the Gen 5 17Ls and the 49 MOS, even though they're old models. I bought a few for the store. Well, yeah, if you're worried about not getting them anymore, I would buy all of them. Whatever's in stock, buy. Because like people buy the 17L and the 49 MOS, they'll buy them. So just whatever you can get, I would get. And that's what I heard as well, is that distributors can't get Glocks either because they're gone, right? They have what they have, and everything else is nope. Everyday American for 5 says, I feel like having different SKUs that are direct cut will be better than MOS long term. All of the good mounting systems are patented. Well, actually, I think the new Primary Arms HTX1 that uses the MOS mounting system or has an adapter for the MOS mounting system, pretty darn good. So I think the aftermarket MOS solutions are actually the best use of the MOS solution when you're not actually using the MOS solution as designed from Glock, if that makes sense. But yeah, I also like direct cut as well. Thank you, Everyday American. Casually fascist because because I'm anti-dem communist for 5 says, Glock about to make the biggest baller move and drop their AR on the American market to make up for lost sales. Also possible, maybe they rush out an AR. I kind of forgot about that, honestly. So yeah, maybe they rush out their AR as well to the civilian market and try and make up some new market share in a different area. Possible. Thank you for that, sir. Polly B for $20. Thank you very much, sir. That is incredibly generous. Trench is so touched with autism, but he's a soldier, so it's kind of a package deal. As much as I've enjoyed his sometime status as a lolcow, he has a beautiful wife, and I pray they enjoy a long and fruitful union. True, yeah. Congratulations to Trench for getting married. And I mean, listen, everybody in the chat, you can dog him as much as you want, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of y'all aren't married, a lot of y'all are single, And, I know it's hard out there. It's the struggle out there or whatnot. But, I mean, game is game, all right? All right? Congratulations to the guy. Thank you, Polly B. I appreciate it, man. Huge Ass for 5 says, Twench doesn't yell at dudes all day. He uses his throat in a different way to massage those men. Huge Ass. I appreciate you, man. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. Hey, speaking of wacky things at wacky times, FN was like, you know what, guys? Everybody's upset because we discontinued our favorite Fortnite gun. And we said, no more $3,500 piece of plastic for you. How about a new one, though? So FN, based on the FN MRGG developed for the US military SOCOM, has developed a new SCAR Mark III and named it the FN ARCA. Apparently aiming for the British Army's new rifle project Greyburn. I read that as Gayburn originally because it was for the British Army. So I thought British Army, Gayburn kind of just goes hand in hand or in different places, right? It features an AR-style charging handle and M-lock handguard. So this is like a SCAR AR hybrid. I don't even know exactly what to think about this thing, other than the fact that it looks hideous. It looks like a super tall pencil-barreled AR, and there really aren't any better pictures of it. Here's one from Brandon FDW, which is a great X account, which you should totally follow, because he does really good work and has all the latest in terms of like military firearms and stuff like that. So Brandon FDW on X, great account, you should follow. Says, heard the Scar Mark III is in the works. Credit to Dave B 1971 for digging this one out. So here we can kind of see it a little bit. Shoot, that's not really working. Reset that. Okay. Let me just open that image in a new tab. Here we go. So we can kind of see it in a little bit more detail. I'll move us out of the way here. So it looks like it has some sort of A2 suppressor mount on there. If that's like a gate lock system, I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at there. We have some sort of adjustable gas block, tiny pencil barrel from the looks of it, aim point duty on top, rear charging handle. That is indeed a rear charging handle right next to his nose. Ugly, hideous, tall receiver, lots of screws. This looks worse than the Jackal. Strictly in terms of looks, this looks worse than the Jackal. And it'll be like $4,000. But yeah, so here you go. This looks like a 5.56 variant if I had to guess. So this is your small frame Scar replacement, maybe never coming to the US market though. Oh, I'm sure it has adjustable gas. I mean, what's weird about it is it looks like it has a gas block right in front of the handguard, and then it has a adjustment knob inside of the handguard. So I have no idea what's going on.
What do you think
why is it so tall?
What do you think the odds are that this will run that new 6.5 by 43 or whatever it is?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it might be chambered in that, but I think if this is for a British military contract, it's going to be contracted for 5.56. Versus the LICC, right, the LIC program, which is developed solely for the 6.5 by 43. Now, it's possible that they can make this to 6.5 by 43, but you have to remember the magazines are not the same with 6.5 by 43. The bolt is not the same. The barrel extensions are not the same. So unless they have a different lower that takes the different style magazines that are wider and longer, this won't take 6.5 by 43. Possible, but I believe that this was developed for that contract, which means it is almost certainly 5.56. Red Right Hand says Europe is going to go 6mm rounds again. You watch. Possibly. You never know. But as of right now, I would say it's 5.56. Could be possibly they poured it to 6.5 by 43 at some point in the future, but as of right now, no. Yeah, imagine a Unity riser on that thing, dude. I just think it's hideous, and I can't even see the full thing, but just how skinny the barrel is with how tall the receiver is. It's kind of Scar, but screwier. I think it looks worse than the Scar that came out 20 years ago. Casually fascist or fact because I am anti-dem communist. For 2 says compare the Glock rifles to FN's new rifles. I think the Glock is just an AR for the most part. Like, it probably has a couple little internal changes, but for the most part, I think the Glock AR is going to be a decent AR as long as it's not insanely expensive. You know, I think it's just going to be another BCM Geisley plus style rifle, basically. Versus this is something completely new. Thank you for that, sir. Joseph Mejia, Joseph Velvet for 2 says, I love the Scar. I hate this. Yeah, I'm in that same boat with you. I think the Scar, which is sitting over in my closet right now, I actually need to ship that back. But the Scar looks like classic and, you know, it has like a shape to it. This thing just looks hideous. And I think that might even be an AR style buffer tube on the back, which makes it even worse. Thank you, Joseph. Huge Ass for 5 says, since I'm married nearly 20 years, I will take the lead on making fun of Twinch. Well, damn, you got to ways that. I think me and my wife, we have our 6th anniversary coming up in about 12 days or so. Got to make sure I don't forget that. Otherwise, it could be my last. Thank you, Huge Ass. Casually Fasket, because I'm anti-dem communist for 5, says the Glock AR was specifically made for the Brit military trials. Yeah, for a different program. That was like a SOCOM thingamajig with the Vortex AMG Shorty. But then the Glock AR has also been spotted in Slovakia because it's their police force rifle. And then I believe that they are also sending some down to Brazil, if I remember correctly. So it is out in the wild. It does exist. People have them, just not in the US as of yet, or at least not in large numbers. It might be in testing in some places, but as of right now, I don't think the Glock AR is in the US. Moonman for 5 says the M4's worst feature, the charging handle, that no other gun uses, now on a $4,000 gun. I know people really get caught up on the charging handle on an AR. I don't care. Like, the point of a charging handle is to basically never use it. So I think the ARs is actually the best because it's the most out of the way. Like I subjectively like the ACR charging handle style more, but like, I mean, and ARs has always worked, and like you never use them. You never like you use them once per day, basically, unless you have another problem. And even a catastrophic malfunction, like they're pretty easy to mortar out. Now you could say the Scar has a more robust charging handle, but usually they're heavier and more complicated and take up more space and cause the receivers to be taller and whatnot. But yeah, like I get that like reaching all the way back is less ergonomic, but if you have a good rifle, you're almost never doing that. Thank you, Moonman. Appreciate that. Matt for 2 says Glock could do a big fun and release a P320 clone. No, that would be silly. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely tarded. Don't do that. All right. Well, speaking of tardy, silly things, and no, not Richard or Trench, how about global conflict? But instead of with anyone cool, we're going to war with South American drug cartels and Venezuela. That could be fun. Oh, this was something that I wasn't really aware of, but apparently this has been getting more and more traction in the mainstream, is a apparent imminent clash between the US military and Venezuela, which I don't even know what Venezuela has. So we have a couple of videos lined up to see what a potential conflict would look like. The US military has been steadily amassing a large amount of troops, naval and air assets in the Caribbean over the last 2 months, conducting training missions off the coast of Venezuela, reopening a military base in Puerto Rico that had been shuttered for decades, and attacking speedboats carrying suspected drug traffickers from Venezuela and Colombia. As of Tuesday, a significant percentage of all deployed U.S. naval assets globally are also now located in the U.S. Southern Command. The U.S. military's command responsible for operations in the region, according to a fleet tracker published by the United States Naval Institute news portal. That includes the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, amounting to more than 4,500 Marines and sailors, 3 guided missile destroyers, an attack submarine, special operations ship, a guided missile cruiser, and a P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft. At the same time, the U.S. has deployed 10 F-35 jets to Puerto Rico, which has become a hub for the U.S. military as part of the increased focus on the Caribbean. The U.S. has also deployed at least 3 MQ-9 Reaper drones to the island, according to images captured by Reuters in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Naval Station Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico, a U.S. military installation that has been shuttered since 2004, is now back up and running, according to satellite imagery and photos taken at the base. At least one AC-130J Ghost Rider, a heavily armed plane capable of providing air support to ground troops, was photographed equipped with Hellfire missiles at Jose Aponte de la Torre Airport in Puerto Rico, which is used by the installation. A separate image captured by a local photographer appears to show another Ghost Rider at the same facility, the airport that has been a staging ground for U.S. military operations in the region over the last several months. In review of the open source flight data, CNN identified over 200 military flights conducted in the Caribbean over the 2-month period between August 15th and October 15th. The missions were carried out by 83 separate aircraft, including intelligence gathering planes and tankers used to refuel jets midair. So basically, we got some amassing of troops, of cool airplanes, of all sorts of fun little things within striking distance of Venezuela, which tensions have been on the rise for a little while now. Yeah. They need democracy. Well, I mean, listen, we set up all of this Banana Republic stuff in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I guess it's time to clean it up now. Somebody had mentioned this earlier in the Discord, but I think this is the Call of Duty Ghosts timeline, if I remember correctly. So all we need now is a tungsten rod attack on the U.S. and the other superpowers from a South American takeover of one of our weapon satellites, which totally exist, of course. And then this would kick off the Call of Duty Ghosts timeline.
Trump opens up to the idea, as President Trump opens up to the idea of strikes on Venezuela and not just on unarmed drug boats suspected of carrying drugs in international waters, we figured it would be a good idea to take a look at what the South American country has in its arsenal and how it stacks up against the United States. On paper, the Bolivarian armed forces claim hundreds of thousands of troops, modern Russian fighter jets, missile systems, and even drone factories.
By modern Russian jets, you mean like jets from like 20, 30 years ago that were new? Or do you mean like actual modern jets?
But in reality, sanctions, corruption, and years of economic hardship have hollowed it out, turning one of Latin America's most ambitious militaries into a shell of its former self. Still, it would be a mistake to ignore Venezuela's armed forces entirely. Because while they may not be a peer adversary, they've cultivated strategic ties with countries like Russia, Iran, and China. They've threatened neighbors, run joint military exercises with US rivals, and leaned heavily into asymmetric tactics. Welcome back to Task and Purpose. I'm Kyle, and I'm really glad you're joining us here today, where we are going to break down what Venezuela's military actually looks like, what's real, what's for show.
Now, Richard, wasn't it Task and Purpose that fired, what's his name? Clippy? Cappy, that's the guy. Yeah, they fired him for some reason, right? Or he like got let go.
Well,
I forget the job that happened.
I don't think they fired him. I think he quit because he was wanting to post more of his own content and take it in his own direction. And
well, yeah, and Task and Purpose is a the people who own them might be a little silly sometimes, but yeah, their jets are 4th gen at best and only in limited numbers. That would make more sense, right? Not like cutting edge technology for what is essentially a third world country propped up by oil. Yeah, AK-100 series plan. Well, hey, we did there was another company that just started making AK-100 series stuff, right, for the US.
Was it Meridian?
Was it Meridian or somebody else? Now again, I'm not a AK aficionado, so it's maybe this will be our retarded testing war, right? So we do a stupid test war against Venezuela while Russia's doing the same against Ukraine, and we can see if our stuff actually works or not.
Show and why it still matters. But first, let's talk about D-brand phone cases. Now,
no, we won't. But hey, you should go check out this video. I'll put the link in the description for you guys. I do like now that on YouTube, at least, they tell you where the ad starts and stops. That is insanely helpful.
Venezuela's military is officially called the Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana, or FANB. I nailed that one. That's what 4 years of high school Spanish looks like. It includes 5 branches: the Army, Navy, Air Force, National Guard, and the National Militia, which is essentially a state-aligned paramilitary. In the early 2000s, under Hugo Chavez, they went through something of a modernization effort, spending billions on Russian weapons. This included, but was not limited to, about 100,000 AK-103 rifles, 24 Su-30 jets, helicopters, about 92 T-72 tanks, surface-to-air missile batteries, and rocket artillery systems. Under Nicolas Maduro, the military has attempted to continue this modernization effort, but mostly has just become even more politicized. Its top ranks are filled with loyalists, and officers are expected to swear allegiance not just to the nation, but to the socialist revolution.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of MiG-15s in this image right here. Like apparently they were issued hundreds of MiG-15s, hundreds of them. Yeah, the funny thing about all of this is like when they'd say like, oh, look at the jets, look at the planes, look at the tanks that they have and whatnot. I'm like, what do they do against cruise missiles? Like, what do they do against an F-35? Right? If the F-35 is taking out all of your fighters and helicopters before you can even detect them, which you probably can't even detect them, right? If you don't have any sort of ballistic missile system to intercept, like what? Like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, unless you have to put boots on the ground, right? I don't see getting into a war with the U.S. military is a bad proposition for these guys, unless it's boots on the ground.
Which is a pretty malleable thing that they can just do whatever they want with. Over the years, there have been repeated purges of officers suspected of disloyalty, especially after the failed 2019 uprising. This is a place where performance has very little to do with promotion. Still, their military is estimated to include about 123,000 personnel, with about 8,000 reservists, and then they boast 200,000 militia members. But those numbers don't really mean a whole lot just on their own. After years of underfunding and poor logistics, many units probably couldn't even accomplish their assigned missions, and equipment is often cannibalized for parts. Training cycles are irregular or non-existent, and morale is suspected to be really low. There are even credible reports that a lot of units are made up entirely of ghost soldiers so that their corrupt commanders can collect their paychecks. Some of you may remember this was reported to have happened in the Afghan National Army during our brief involvement in that country's freedom quest. Still, they boast jets, ships, tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, things that militaries typically have. Despite the institutional
I mean, it looks great for the villain from like a 1980s movie where it's some nondescript South American country that Arnold Schwarzenegger has to infiltrate and take people out in. Like it looks perfect for that. Fits the vibe. Modern military 2025, not so much.
They still do pose a threat, even though they don't really stand a chance against the United States in a head-to-head showdown. It still remains that they could get in some shots, and they certainly pose a serious threat to their more immediate neighbors in the region. If things were to come to blows between Venezuela and the United States, it's their air force that would probably be on the front line, so we're going to take a look at that first. Their prized possession is 24 Su-30 Mk2 multi-role fighters that they bought from Russia between 2006 and 2012. These are the export version of the Su-30 MKK, and they are twin-seat.
I think they're kind of hot looking. They look like a wider F-16 to me. I didn't get the planetism, but I think they're kind of hot looking. Yeah. Ghost Recon, yeah, exactly.
Twin-engine jets that are based on the Su-27 and optimized for air superiority, precision strike, and maritime strike. That's the important part. The closest U.S. comparison is probably the F-15 Eagle. They can...
Their closest comparison is the one plane that's no longer in military service other than the F-15EX, right? The F-6, I think is how they call that.
Carry up to 8,000 kilograms of ordnance, or about 17,600 pounds, and that can include R-77 and R-73 air-to-air missiles, KH-31 anti...
Well, listen, they're not stealth fighters, all right? That's the thing. It's like, you have these planes, okay? You have these fighters that will work well enough against a similarly powered military. However, you cannot engage a single American airplane. You can't take on an F-22. You can't take on an F-35. They will fox to you before you're within visual range, right? From like 30 miles out. You can't land a strike on a ship because you will be engaged and targeted beforehand. So I don't know if they had 200 of these planes, if it would really make that big of a difference. Right? It's like if you simply cannot get them into striking range of either a ship or an enemy plane, I don't think that they're particularly useful.
anti-ship missiles, and other guided bombs. They have a top speed of over Mach 2 and a combat radius of 1,500 kilometers, or about 930 miles, making the Su-30 Mk2 one of the most capable jets in Latin America on paper. Now, accidents, sanctions choking off spare parts, and other issues have reduced the actual flying fleet to as low as 8 by some estimates.
You have 24. How many are operational? 8. Your premier fighter, how many do you have? 8. We have 8, and we have a couple pilots brave enough to go out there. That's actually amazing. Imagine being one of the 8 souls to go up against the United States Air Force. Good luck, bro. You're gonna figure out why we don't have free healthcare. All right, bud. All right.
And other ones I saw were around like 21, so not as bad, but still not great. The Su-30 has proved capable in ground attack and bombing roles, but several have been alleged.
So now I do like this argument because you always hear like, well, listen, in a dogfight in close range, an F-15 could take out an F-35. If the F-35 is in a dogfight, what does the F-35 even carry? Like 100, 120 rounds of their gun? Like basically nothing. An F-35 will never get into a dogfight because it never has to. Like, unless they are completely retarded, an F-35 should never get into a dogfight ever.
Allegedly shot down over Ukraine.
See, people say the F-35 is trash, but look, against what? Nothing else can see it, and nothing else can get within engagement range, where it's like, well, it's not as maneuverable as an F-22. It's like, that's irrelevant, right? Because it has splashed you from 30 miles away.
Its air-to-air prowess has also been witnessed, some people say over Ukraine, but we do have confirmation that India used them against their brief spats against Pakistan.
Well, yeah, if they're an India plane, then I mean, that's another knock against them too.
Pakistan recently. Venezuela also owns a few, like 3 F-16A and B variants that they had delivered to them in the early 1980s, but these are large.
I love that the F-16 is nearly 50 years old, dude, and it's still like one of the most gorgeous looking planes ever made. Still cool too.
Largely grounded.
Now, none of them work, but they have 3 of them. They might as well be in a museum.
Due to lack of U.S. support. The rest of their air fleet includes aircraft like the K-8W trainers from China. They have a small number of C-130 Hercules and just a whole bunch of other fixed wing and rotor aircraft. They got a ton of stuff. They do lack airborne early warning systems, aerial refueling capabilities, and modern ground control infrastructure. Their pilot training is also pretty inconsistent, and experienced aviators are becoming increasingly hard to come by. Venezuela's Navy once aspired to be a major regional maritime force, and today it's mostly stuck in port. Its surface fleet is anchored by 6 Lupo-class frigates purchased from Italy in the late 1970s. These 2,500...
Yeah, like, what do they do against one sub? Like, one attack sub? What does their entire navy do against one attack sub? Let alone everything else that we've talked about. Like, dude, when I was a kid, I had like all these books on like different planes and tanks and all this other stuff, right? You know, you're a kid, you're trying to learn all this stuff. The F-4 Phantom for a long time was my favorite plane of all time.
Ton ships were built for anti-submarine warfare and general escort duties. When new, they carried a 127mm main gun, automatic anti-ship missiles, and a speed surface-to-air missiles. I think I said that right. Maybe it's a speed A. I don't know. Roast me in the comments. Today, though, most of those systems are either inactive or obsolete, or a combination of both. Under the seas are 2 German-built Type 209 diesel-electric submarines. These were widely exported and are still considered stealthy and capable in other navies, but Venezuela's examples have not been overhauled in decades. At least one is believed to be non-functional, and both are likely restricted to limited port trials if they're operable at all. Their most modern...
It's nothing. It's like, well, we have, on paper, we have submarines. Do they work? No. Do we have anybody who can work on them? Also no.
Modern vessels in the fleet are the Guaycama Kudu-class offshore patrol vessels built by Spain and delivered between 2011 and 2019. These are 2,200 patrol ships equipped with the 76mm main gun, and they're capable of helicopter operations. They're designed for more Coast Guard type stuff like border enforcement, counter-smuggling, that sort of thing, not really
counter smuggling, or do you mean doing the smuggling, right? Because we are talking about corrupt South American countries. Not that our country's any better in terms of corruption, but I would not be surprised if a lot of this stuff was used to facilitate smuggling of different varieties, right?
high-end combat, but they are reportedly among the only.
Well, see, that's the thing too. Department of War is just ruling up the targets they can destroy. Everything that you see is a really easy target, right? All of this stuff, the boats, all the planes, really easy to find, really easy to destroy. A land war is still going to be a nightmare because you have civilian populations, you have insurgents, you have guerrilla tactics, you have all of that sort of nightmare material, like what we deal with in other wars, right? The hard targets themselves are the obvious targets, right? The ships, the planes, the infrastructure, the tanks, all that stuff, super easy to find and eliminate. The lone wolves, the guerrilla fighters, like that's going to be the annoying part. And actually trying to occupy a third world country like this, as we found out, not particularly pleasant.
Only ships still regularly operating in the Venezuelan Navy. Some of you may remember that in 2020.
Well, yeah, exactly. You could take out basically 90% of Venezuelans' ships and planes and tanks in a couple weeks, right? Could you actually hold a country? Probably not. Not without an insane presence, like absolutely insane.
One of Venezuela's patrol crafts made international headlines after it collided with a civilian cruise liner that it was attempting to intercept, and it sank shortly thereafter. While the cruise ship was fine, that was kind of a black eye on a navy who at one point was pretty formidable. Now let's look at what Venezuela has as far as anti-air capabilities.
Now the anti-air capabilities matter a little bit, but do they have anything capable of engaging accurately at F-35 or an F-22? Probably not, right? Now, some of the other fighters in the U.S. military, like, of course, they can engage the older planes or the bigger planes or whatnot, but can they engage, like, our cutting-edge stuff that we would actually send in for these to take out the air defenses? Probably not.
2005, they purchased 3 Chinese JYL-1 long-range 3D surveillance radar systems. These can search up to 25,000 meters up and about 320 kilometers out, feeding location data to the rest of whatever is integrated in their network. Part of that network is the Russian-made S-300VM system, known by NATO as the SA-23 Gladiator. It's the export cousin of Russia's own high-end S-300V4 system and was originally built to counter tactical ballistic missiles and aircraft. The S-300VM can engage targets at ranges up to 200 to 250 kilometers, depending on the missile variant, and at altitudes exceeding 30 kilometers, making it one of the most capable non-Western SAM systems in Latin America. Each battery includes multiple transporter erector launchers that can carry a variety of missiles depending on the mission. It has a phased array of radar and a mobile command post.
Well, I mean, yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, so we took out a bunch of the air defense stuff back in the Gulf War without having a ton of stealth planes available, just F-117s. Also a plane that goes insanely hard, way too hard. And yeah, I mean, the only one that ever got shut down was because of a malfunction and the world's luckiest shot. Tragic.
While its range is impressive, Venezuela's S-300VM network is small with just 2 systems in a single air defense battalion. And in a constant...
You have 2 targets. So it's 2 SAM systems essentially versus the entire U.S. Air Force. All right, good luck. Good luck, bro.
In this video, they also likely suffer...
Dude, I wonder how many missiles do they even have? 6, 8, 10 in total? It's like you have the systems. Do you have people to operate or the munitions?
From maintenance challenges due to sanctions, lack of spare parts, and reduced training hours. Even so, it gives Venezuela a significant point defense capability.
Now, something that could be of interest is if there was a hot war in Venezuela, right? Something brewing down there. It's possible that a third party might want to come in and prop up Venezuela or other players in the region. So maybe they get some other equipment that we don't know about or something to that effect. You never know.
Capability around key sites like Caracas, major air bases, logistics hubs, things like that, and it does pose a serious threat to even fifth-generation jets if they can somehow be ambushed. Venezuela also operates...
Yeah, see, that would be a surprise, right? So if, somehow Venezuela received a covert shipment of like cutting edge, whether it's Chinese or Russian SAM systems or something that would give them an edge against something like an F-22 or an F-35, and somehow the US government was not aware of it, then that could change the game. What would probably happen, though, is that they would get a shipment of a couple cutting edge SAMs. The US would know about it, and they would send something in specifically to take those out, like drones or whatnot, right? So you would have them, you would think that gives you an edge, and then they get destroyed, and you're like, well, now we're back to what we had.
The Buck M2, which is a mobile medium-range surface-to-air missile system. Each Buck M2 battery can engage targets at up to 45 to 50 kilometers.
An F-16 pilot? I'm jealous, man. That's cool. When I was a kid, dude, like if I was the only thing that really interested me in the military would be a pilot. It just that was my thing growing up. Was like, if I could fly a plane, that'd be awesome. That's cool, dude. Jealous of you, sir.
And altitudes of 25 kilometers with the ability to track and fire on multiple aircraft or cruise missiles simultaneously. It's equipped with active radar-guided 9M317 missiles and is far more capable than older systems.
Honestly, if the U.S. government wanted to test a bunch of unmanned systems on a live fire enemy, maybe the Venezuelan military would be a good target where you don't even have to risk human lives. Just saying. Aw, thanks, man.
Systems in dealing with low-flying, highly maneuverable.
Okay, well, I'm less jealous of you now, but still cool. Still cool.
Targets. It is less powerful than the S-300 VM, but the Buck M2 fills a pretty important gap in Venezuela's layered air defenses and gives them a highly mobile system capable of protecting fielded forces or critical infrastructure. The S-125 Picora, also known by NATO as the SA-3 Goa, I think I said all that right, roast me again, could face U.S. aircraft as well. This is a much older Soviet-era air defense system because it was originally designed in the 60s as a static short to medium-range SAM used primarily for point defense. Venezuela's version is the modernized Picora 2M, which can reportedly engage targets out to 35 kilometers with improved radar.
They're 16 miles. So it's like, not even half the effective range of whatever the F-35 is carrying on it, which is quite funny.
And missile performance. While it's no match for modern suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD capabilities, it still poses a threat to low-flying aircraft and drones.
Well, yeah, I think that is actually a good point, too, is China also wants to test their newest stuff against the U.S. military without actually having to be in a hot war themselves, right? So giving it to Iran to use against whatever Israel has or whatever U.S. supplies to Israel, right? Or maybe some third world country that they think is about to be in a conflict. Maybe they want to do some T&E without having to risk their own personnel. Might not be a bad idea, right? So I think that all the big players are interested in all the small players because they get to observe, right? So I think Russia and China would be very interested in watching what the U.S. military does to some of these outdated systems and to whatever the Venezuelan military has, to see what sort of tactics the U.S. engages in, to see how their stuff holds up, right? I think all players are very interested in the game of world politics,
particularly in cluttered terrain or near urban areas. Rounding it all out is about 300 ZU-23 units. These are upgraded with rangefinders, infrared sights, and automatic target tracking. It's still completely outdated against modern jets or standoff.
Yeah, I mean, this is just drone fodder. This is just like point defense. If the plane's never going to get within visual range of you, if it knows you're there, you're just gone, right? Whatever it might be.
Weapons, but the ZU-23 remains dangerous to low-flying helicopters, drones, or slow aircraft, and has also been widely
pretty sure that's a YHM Turbo K on the end of that.
Repurposed as a ground support weapon, mounted on technicals or trucks, which we all love, for terrestrial combat. Together, though, these systems form what's supposed to be a layered air defense network, though how well it functions under pressure is a big question. Right now, it doesn't really seem.
Huge Ass for 5 says, I'm unafraid of a military that marches like that. Well, hey, I mean, I've seen some pretty bad U.S. marches, right? Now, very impressive marching per military performance, I think, is actually North Korea. Very impressive parades. Not particularly impressive in terms of their capabilities. Thank you, Huge Ass. Ridiculous for 2 says the USA will bribe their generals like Syria and Iraq almost assuredly. Well, the CIA is going to be waging war long before anything goes hot, right? And yes, corruption is very easy to exploit. Thank you, Ridiculous. Crack for 10 says all the crap Venezuela bought from Russia over the last 20 years, and they let rust out in the tropic climate. They have no idea how to maintain it. Well, third world people and corrupt politicians do be acting like that. Thank you, Crack, for the 10. Appreciate it, sir. Moonman for 5 says Venezuela's newest stuff is from when Chavez was still alive, true, over a decade ago, and was the made-for-export versions of Ivan's toys from the 90s. Yeah, I do love that the export versions are almost always like down-tuned or like hand-me-down variants, basically, like cheaper and worse in every way, because you don't want to, even your allies, you don't want to give them the same capabilities as you, right? Thank you, Moonman. Casually Fasket, because I'm anti-dem communist for 5, says some of y'all didn't live through Panama. Y'all fixing to learn today. Well, I mean, as long as they're not trying to go boots on the ground for any specific reason, like as from what I've seen, I don't see any threats to the U.S. government whatsoever, the U.S. military. Chud McGill for 2 says Blood Meridian Fantasy. Let's go, Latina sex slaves. I don't, well, I mean, I'm sure there are many Marines who would love to have their own personal harems of Latinas, but let's hope that is not the purpose. Huge Ass for 2 says Desert Storm 2, Tropical Boogaloo. Yeah. Hey, people have been wanting CIBs. There you go. Thank you, Huge Ass. Moonman for 5 says, no, bad chud. We will not be keeping their women. That's where the Spanish screwed up. We will be keeping none of them, chud. There you go. That's right. We'd send them to another third world country. Thank you, Moonman. Crack for 5 says almost all of their planes, tanks, and such are perpetually deadlines. I think you mean like out of service. Like, yeah. That's the problem too. Is like if China sends something hyper capable and very specific to somebody like Venezuela, do they have the technology infrastructure to actually maintain something that's, sensitive and complicated?
Absolutely not.
Probably not. Yeah. Thank you, Crack. Huge Ass for 5 says the most capable fighter in Latin America is like winning first place in a spelling contest with a group of stutterers. True. It's the tallest midget and the smartest retard. Thank you, Huge Ass. McLeod 2486 says Islam versus communism. One has Dubai insanity versus eating zoo animals while having the same amount of oil right under their feet. That's actually a good comparison. Is like you see what one country does with their resources and what they are able to achieve, and then you see another, and you're like, similar circumstances, different peoples though.
Venezuela actually has a larger reserve.
Ivan says that the U.S. dropped 27,000 troops into Panama. Well, I think as of right now, there's 4,500 Marines stationed in Puerto Rico. It's not quite that size, or unless you're saying that's a new development. Moonman for 5 says, fun fact, fans, guerrilla warfare and hiding amongst civilian population only works if I am kind of mean. Well, see, that's the thing. If you go scorched earth, like, it doesn't matter, right? You can hide wherever you want. There ain't going to be a building left standing for you to hide in. Thank you, Moonman. I'm here for the oil, not for the architecture, okay? Eli for 2 says, first time catching live and stack PSI to bankruptcy. Well, thank you, Eli. I appreciate the 2, sir. Hey, glad you could actually catch live. Happy to have you here, man. Thanks. McLeod for another 5 says imperialism is expensive, which is why the UK gave up the empire. It was bankrupting the country. Well, so imperialism usually does lead to internal struggles within the capital of the empire. Happened with Rome, happened with Byzantium, and then you have different ethnic groups that you're fighting, and you have internal struggle of people wanting the different allocation of resources, and it takes a lot of manpower to keep everybody in check. So imperialism does introduce problems for sure. That being said, like, there are some empires that lasted for 1,000 years. So that's faster than most democracies or most monarchies have ever lasted. So as like a form of government stability, like empires work in some cases, objectively, in some cases they work for a while. I think the point being that all systems fail. But yes, empires do introduce certain factors that have to be controlled for. Thank you, McLeod. Casually, Fasket, because I'm anti-dem communist for 5, says, we are already day in Venezuela. It is confirmed the CIA is there working with people to overthrow Maduro. The military is in case they need backup. That's also very plausible. And I mean, listen, the CIA and other 3-letter agencies have been messing around in their little playpen of South America for the last 70 years ago is when it started. Kind of. I'm sure before then, too, in some cases, but really kicked off 70 years ago, I would say. Probably 70 years ago. Thank you, sir. But yeah, no, it does appear that they are more interested in Venezuela as well. I think we should take over Venezuela and then use it as a cage for all of our immigrants. And then we send all of our immigrants to Venezuela to work the oil fields. Right? We pay them a good wage, of course, right? We're not uncivilized here. We just move them all to Venezuela, and then we take the oil for ourselves, and we use the profits to, pay them a decent wage for a third world country. Of course.
Yeah, our government has had a vested interest in South America ever since the rubber plantations.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll just a lot of their immigrants are already from there, so really we're just sending them home. Okay, it's not a problem. Paulie B for 5 says, Venezuela is Ralph in the back of the bus. I'm in danger. True. Yes. Yes. The F-35 is hungry and must be fed on a regular basis. Thank you, Paulie B. Appreciate it, sir. And Glock 17 Enjoyer says, damn, I'm late. What did I miss? Dude, you missed a lot. If you're just now showing up, you missed the whole Glock discussion like an hour and a half ago, bro.
You missed
But just a little bit. Now we're talking about Venezuela. Sea Runner 1277 for 2 says, deny central bank, lose autonomy. WLCM to the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Okay, I thought you were actually trying to spell out like an acronym for something, and I was like, ooh, what does he mean? What does he mean? But no, you're just saying welcome to the jungle. All right, Richard,
yes,
you
sir.
have a very important task. I've got to go pee, so I'm going to leave you to entertain 650 people. If there are not still 650 people when I return, you get fired. All right, so tell them some jokes or something fun.
Oh man, well, to be put on the spot like that, I really don't do well, but I'll just do this. I'll just put up one single letter and let chat go. Yep, I'm done. The second he walked away. 12 people. I just got fired because 12 of you guys left. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So the reason why is because it's easy to keep them in check with ice. And tacos are great. Let's see. Song recommendations for Venezuela invasion playlist. That's a good one. I have to think about that one for a few. Fine, I see how it is. Bye. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. Doing my best. Let's see. Yes, I will give hugs. Hugs for everyone. Let's see. Yes. Yes.
Dude, how did you do it? Damn. Basically, everybody stayed. All right, fine. No fired.
We dropped 12, and then it came back, and
When I walked in, it was at 6:49, so I'm not gonna fire you for one person. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I held my own for a minute.
Seem like the U.S. is willing to open this up to conventional.
What? I leave for 1 second. Focus trip leaves. Richard encourages race mixing almost immediately. Gross. See, every day I'm like, I think Richard's a Mossad agent. I think he's here to keep tabs on me. Were you talking about? It was Latinas, wasn't it? It was Latinas.
Chud asked why. I said it's because it's easy to keep them in line with ICE.
Now, speaking of CIA propaganda, this is my take. All right, Heath from Texas for 5 says, ever since seeing The Road to El Dorado, which is a great cartoon, I had the sickness for the mocha skin Latina thickness. The urge to colonize is strong. That was CIA propaganda. I guarantee you, because I get it. Listen, I get it. I was like a 6-year-old watching that film. I get it. All right. And Tulip for 82 says, Richard ruled. Oh, well, that's very nice. You got a fan, man.
Well, thank you,
One fan. Hey, and thank you, Tulip. That is very generous. And now that you're all awake,
ground troops, and I say this on October 3rd at roughly 10:50 Eastern Standard Time, so that could change by the time this gets out there, but the conventional wisdom seems to be that we'll use overwhelming air and naval forces to really strike at Maduro's regime, which some people think is pretty fragile. So even though we aren't really worried about encountering them on the ground, we wanted to go over real quick what they have, so here it is. As we mentioned before, they have purchased 92 Russian T-72B1 tanks. Those come with 100.
Okay, does anyone else think that the active protection systems on these tanks kind of makes them look like alligator scales?
Yes.
Which is kind of cool.
25 millimeter main guns, explosive reactive armor, they can have upgraded sights. They're really not bad. Backing them up are about 80 French-made AMX 30s. Now, how many of these work, just like the T-72s, is a mystery. These are smaller, lighter, with smaller guns, not as capable as a T-72, but they do have roughly 80 of them. They also have...
Oh, to be very clear, like the foreign war stuff is all nonsense, gay, retarded ops, right? For other reasons, and will almost certainly cause refugee crises in all of the countries neighboring it, which will, of course, lead to us as well. 100%, Lieutenant Greenleaf. However, we are just talking about the momentary ramifications of an engagement between the U.S. military and the Venezuelan military. Of course, it's going to be bad for us in the long run because our government hates us, right? And I feel bad for the people of Venezuela as well, the people that get bombed out for no reason whatsoever, too, right? Of course.
BMP-3s, BTR-80s, MTLBs, and EE-9 armored cars that offer mobility but little protection against modern weapons. Artillery is thought to be primarily...
All of that stuff just looks like food, right? To an Apache. It just all looks like food.
Old BM-21 Grads and Uragans, with some old 105mm howitzers and other wheeled artillery. The rest of the ground forces are a hodgepodge that more or less represent the tumultuous history of the country. They have things from the US, France, Canada, the Soviet Union, Russia, China, Belgium, Sweden, Italy, the UK, Germany, Poland, and more. It really is just a ton of different things from a ton of different countries, just not in any meaning.
Dwayne K says wars about the drones now. Was just watching some vids last night of Russia-Ukraine war and thought soldiers just sitting around watching drones fly in. Some don't even try to get away. Well, so that's also an interesting thing, is the reason why we see so much drone footage is because drones record everything, right? You don't get to see the recorded footage of tank shells and rockets and missiles and artillery and all this other stuff, right? But there is a camera attached to every drone. So that's why you have so much drone footage, is because, well, that's how they get it, right? That being said, though, like, it's not all on a ground war. Drones can play a huge part. Drones ain't going to do anything against an F-35 and F-22 or ballistic missiles or anything like that, right? Nothing. They're going to do nothing. It's only in the event of a ground war, right? If we have tanks, helicopters, and people on the ground. Then drones come into play. Before then, not really.
meaningful quantities. Their troops are typically armed with AK-103 rifles produced under Russian license by Kavem. These are reliable and rugged, but the Army's main role remains mostly internal security.
Okay, well, I'm not. Allies might be interesting. Iran. Russia. Okay, so but let's get into this because this is from Real Life Lore, which is a fantastic channel. So the reason why I'm kind of like playing this now is because if something just does happen to kick off in the next couple weeks, well, maybe it's a good idea to get spun up on it now, so at least you know what you're talking about. But this is from Real Life Lore. Why the U.S. and Venezuela are on the brink of war. So I expect much three-letter shenanigans telling us why we are about to fight with one of our dirt cousins from the south. But link is in the chat.
It is taking place right now in the Caribbean Sea. The United States is currently deploying more military assets to this theater than at any other point in the 21st century. And it's the largest concentration of U.S. military might in the Western Hemisphere since the country's invasion of Panama in 1989. This time, however, the U.S. military is concentrating its forces just outside of the territorial waters of Venezuela, arguably the most antagonistic country in the Western Hemisphere to American interests. The U.S. has deployed 3 modern Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers and 1 Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, along with at least 1 nuclear-powered attack submarine just offshore of Venezuela that all collectively carry a strike package of dozens to hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles. If these Navy warships weren't enough, they've also been joined by the 20...
So they have like as many Tomahawk cruise missiles as Venezuela has tanks.
2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit as well, consisting of the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, along with its complement of 2 transport and logistical support ships. The USS Iwo Jima, in particular, is basically a miniature-sized aircraft carrier that was captured by photographs on its way to Venezuela with multiple Harrier attack aircraft M22 Osprey.
I forget about Harriers, but Harriers are like the OG VTOL, and they're super cool. Obviously not as advanced as an F-35, but way cheaper.
Assault helicopters and Sikorsky heavy lift helicopters all on board. It can also, along with its 2 transport and logistical support ships, launch multiple hovercraft and amphibious assault vehicles for armed beach assaults under its aerial coverage too. More than 2,500 U.S. Marines have been deployed here with the 22nd, along with around 2,000 sailors belonging to the naval complement with the destroyers, the cruiser, and...
Dude, that reminds me of, what's that retard? That libertarian candidate from 2016?
Oh,
what was
Gary.
his name? Gary something?
Yes.
And he was asked, like, well, what do you think about the situation in Aleppo? And he's like, what is Aleppo? It's, Aleppo, Syria,
Gary
all
Johnson.
the fighting's going on. Gary Johnson, that's his name, yes. What? And just so straight-faced. What is Aleppo? What?
the submarine. And on top of all of this firepower, the US has also deployed a literal combat ship to the theater as well, the USS Minneapolis St. Paul, bringing the total number of vessels deployed in the theater so far up to 9.
Wait, so I don't know what's the definition of littoral? Because is that supposed to be literal or literal? A literal combat ship. It's like, yeah, I know that's what they do, right? That is literal. So it is littoral, L-I-T-T oral, littoral, is a relating to or situated on the shore of the sea or a lake. So it's just in like a amphibious craft? Okay.
Well, at least an additional
shallow water, right, yeah.
10 F-35 fighter jets have also been deployed to airfields in Puerto Rico. The Trump administration's officially stated purpose for deploying all of these assets nearby to Venezuela right now is to simply conduct counter-narcotics operations and to halt the flow of drugs from Venezuela coming into the United States. But deploying warships and nuclear-powered submarines armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Harrier aircraft, F-35 fighters, and thousands of Marines ready for a beach assault appears to be wildly overkill for that kind of a mission alone against drug runners, who most often use nothing more advanced than motorized speedboats. Most drugs enter into the United States today through
the clitoral ship is a liberal lie, does not exist, don't listen to the propaganda.
The Pacific coast anyway, while a great deal more come in through air shipments, none of which the flotilla being assembled off the coast of Venezuela will be capable of stopping, which has led to rampant speculation that they're all...
Oh, I know the Harriers are old, but they're cool, right? And I'm pretty sure we probably have like 5 to 10x the amount of Harriers as we do F-35s. And if it's just dropping bombs or long range missiles against somewhere where all their SAMs are already destroyed, like it doesn't matter if the platform dropping it is an F-35 or a Harrier, right? If all the anti-air is already gone, right?
I thought the clitoral ship was the one posted in the harbor just outside of that hole on the left there.
Full Metal Jacket says incorrect, John. Not many Harrys left. Oh, like we've replaced them all. But I mean, we probably sold them off to somebody then. If we don't have a lot left in inventory, then they're probably somewhere else.
Ulterior objective may be attempting to induce regime change within Venezuela instead, by overthrowing their president, Nicolas Maduro. Merely weeks before this flotilla began being assembled, the US government doubled the bounty it had placed on Maduro's head from $25 million to an unprecedented $50 million.
All right, you know how we were talking about assembling a team for going after SDG-44s in Syria?
Venezuela's a lot closer.
Well, so
they already tried that once,
my apologies again. I don't have the airplane tism. Okay, I just said they were cool. I thought we would have a lot more because they're so much cheaper, but apparently no. They're all replaced by F-35Bs. The great replacement was actually about Harriers and F-35s. All right, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's right. New mission.
The biggest bounty that the US government has ever put on a single individual's head in history.
So wait, what do I have to do? Do we just have to eliminate him to get the 50K, or can we get him out of office to take the 50 million?
I don't know. I'll have to clarify the details on that one.
50 million is a lot of money.
To put out,
it is funny to think about that. Like, there's another sovereign nation that the US is like, oh, by the way, 50 million to kill this guy. All right, fair enough.
His second in command could get a good payday.
$50 million is a lot of what's the currency in Venezuela? What's the conversion rate? Like, what is it? The peso, Venezuelan pesos? What is it? $1 per 1 million Venezuelan pesos? And that's oil money too. Oh, interesting. So the Farva says a group tried to capture him for the bounty a few years back. Didn't go well.
So that's an interesting rabbit hole.
Oh, well, that's actually interesting. So if the Marines still have 39 Harriers, they probably have most of them in Puerto Rico right now, then, or at least like a half dozen, I would imagine. So a good chunk of the Harrier population is actually there right now. That's funny.
The group a few years back that tried to kidnap him and extradite him back to the U.S. was a botched mission from the start. They were working with a group of guerrillas in Colombia. Mm-hmm. And they smuggled in like a bunch of KAK shockwave blades and Bear Creek Arsenal ARs to arm these guys. And then they did a beach landing in broad daylight. And the Venezuelan forces like seen them coming in fishing boats miles away. And they landed on the beach, broad daylight, with their passports and IDs and everything.
So what, they're sitting in a Venezuelan prison right now? Or dead? Or what?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's retarded.
If I recall correctly, they had ties to Robert Kraft and the Kraft family, who was supposed to be financing the operation in order to cash in.
See, that's the thing. $50 million isn't that much, especially when you think about, well, if it's going to take you $20 million to get the team and hardware together in and out.
Supposedly it was only going to be $3 million or something like that is what the guy quoted him.
Well, you probably should have quoted him more than that, right? I mean, like, listen, if I got given $3 million, I could probably come up with a better plan. Not saying it would work, but I could probably come up with a better plan. Yeah, I mean, he's a fan of the Asian and Mediterranean, or not Mediterranean, and South American massages, or so I've heard.
The old brown.
Serious. This $50 million bounty recently placed on Nicolas Maduro is, in comparison, it's double the bounty that the U.S. has put on other previous men on its most wanted lists, like Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and the former leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. all of whom topped out on the U.S. bounty list at just $25 million by comparison. The U.S. bounty on Nicolas Maduro today is what it once had placed on both Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein together. And the U.S. doesn't recognize him as Venezuela's legitimate president.
The highest was 25 million, and I believe that was Osama bin Laden in 2001.
Well, the inflation actually means that is more.
That's what I was going to say.
Because if you look up an inflation calculator since 2001, inflation calculator 2001, I am sure. Well, actually, it's only worth about 42 million.
See, I find that hard to believe because
it's close.
The inflation, the value of the dollar was cut in half within like 3 years. So
right, but that's not the same thing versus purchasing power versus just raw inflation. And it depends if you're looking at like a core basket of goods or you're looking like at overall, because if you look at it like just fuel price inflation or something like that. So however they're calculating it, it is 82% change from 2001 to 2025. So roughly you're talking about like 45 million.
President either. And Maduro himself is far from the only man in Venezuela with a high U.S. bounty on his head. His appointed Minister of the Interior, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, now has a $25 million bounty placed on his head as well, equaling Osama bin Laden's bounty. His defense minister, General Vladimir Pedrino Lopez, has a $15 million bounty, while his Minister of Industry, Tariq Zaidan Aissami Maddah, has another $10 million bounty.
Yeah, see, I feel like the better buy is actually one of these three, right? Because if one of these guys,
the better buy is one well-placed drone in a meeting.
Well, but listen, if you know where one of these guys is and you can smuggle in, like what they did, do you guys remember the attack on the Russian airfield where they took out all of their nuclear bombers, right? Yes. Something like that, where you smuggle in like 20 to 50 drones. And then you figure out where he's going to be somewhere, and then you just bomb his entire convoy, right? Collect the bounty.
Actively representing $100 million worth of bounties placed on just these 4 senior leaders of the Venezuelan government alone. In July.
Well, imagine getting all 4 of them at the same time, too. One meeting, $100 million. Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I don't know how the bounties actually work. If you need to like proof of death or something like that, you have to. Mercenaries 2, true. Mercenaries 1 and 2, great games. Going through the full deck of cards, that was fun. I loved Mercenaries 1.
The month before all of these bounties were dramatically increased, U.S. President Donald Trump signed a secret directive that authorized the U.S. military to deploy force against Latin American cartels that were designated by his government as terrorist organizations, which includes Venezuela's most infamous criminal organization, Tren de Aragua. This secret directive has once again raised the specter of a...
Hey, that's Favela from Modern Warfare 2. Look at that hellscape of people packed in there like sardines.
21st century interpretation of America's Monroe Doctrine. Its historical justification for militarily intervening in the affairs of other states in the Americas. The Trump administration accuses Maduro and his close inner circle of secretly running their own drug cartel called the Cartel of the Suns, which the Trump administration further accuses of providing material support to both Tren.
The drug cartel that is the CIA.
Well, I mean, technically, all countries have their own spooky guys doing spooky things, you know? It's just how much do they publicly let on that they're actually doing. Yes, that is the ACR map. ACR is king, 100%.
Nicaragua, and the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico their cocaine and fentanyl running operations into the United States. Thus, the Trump administration has led the U.S. into designating the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization as well, which is the justification that the U.S. government has used to label Maduro and his inner circle as narco-terrorists and to place massive bounties.
Why do they have Russian/Middle Eastern names? Well, wouldn't you like to know? Let me tell you about a wacky connection that some of these people have, all right?
on their heads with. And it might also become the casus belli that they use to initiate attacks on the Maduro government from the flotilla that's being assembled off of their shores. It should also be noted that there are many controversies surrounding the Cartel of the Suns, including as to whether or not it even exists. Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic have all joined the United States and declared the Cartel of the Suns to be a terrorist organization. Maduro himself denies that any such organization exists, while Colombia's left
South American dictator claims innocence. Sure.
Leftist president Gustavo Petro has also publicly rejected the cartel's existence, and it's insisted that it's nothing more than a propaganda tool being used to justify toppling Venezuela's government. Several internal reports in the US also seem to contradict many of the Trump administration's claims here. In May, a National Intelligence Council report that was declassified concluded that the Maduro government likely didn't have any policy of cooperating with Tren de Aragua, nor did it direct any of Tren de Aragua's operations in the United States. Similarly, the Mexican government has also said that they have never found
the Mexican government, quote unquote, Mexican.
any link between Maduro's government in Venezuela and the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. Nonetheless, the justifications and casus belli have been drafted and the firepower put into place. All that's required now is to simply pull the trigger. And on the 2nd of September, the first shots were fired. A boat carrying 11 Venezuelans in international waters that had departed from Venezuela was shot by a missile likely fired by an American MQ-9 Reaper drone, killing everyone on board. The US government claimed afterwards that the boat was carrying a large amount of drugs and that everyone on board were members of Tren de Aragua, potentially representing the first instance of a lethal US drone strike conducted against a Latin American cartel since Trump returned back to the presidency. This operation sharply contrasts with the traditional procedures the US has used against drug-running vessels in the past, which are typically intercepted by the Coast Guard and raided so that their contents can be verified and their crews apprehended. Blowing up a suspected drug-running vessel with a drone strike isn't something that's happened until now, and it's only added on to the escalation going on around Venezuela, since the Trump administration accuses Maduro.
Say again? Oh, I know. It's like chill lo-fi anime waifu music, right? That you would see on like the YouTube front page.
Yeah.
It's like
sounds like something Johnny Sins will be listening to.
Kyle says China is always going after USA resources and disrupting them. They use fentanyl, money, and sex to corrupt and control resources. Most raw mats that make drugs come from China. The DEA forced regulations. I think he probably wanted to continue on there, but yeah, I mean, China is responsible for the vast amount of fent heroin deaths in the US, I want to say, which has reached 100,000 a year. So I mean, if they're using that to attack the U.S. populations, I mean, I feel like going after the drug cartels is 1,000% justified if you have 100,000 dead Americans per year because of these people importing it en masse. Now, again, you have to combine that in with the American pharmaceutical companies, which are also pumping people full. Legal. Well, a lot of it is legal. A lot of it is illegal as well. But you have to go after both, being the legal importation of these drugs and the illegal importation of these drugs, the over prescriptions, the filling prescriptions without actually needing them, all sorts of wacky things that you have to fix to actually go after the drug problems.
Yeah,
Trump's government of directly maintaining links
that don't realize that fentanyl citrate is produced right here domestically in the United States by Pfizer and many other companies.
Pfizer, I was told Pfizer had my best interests at heart.
They do.
To Tren de Aragua. Adding even more fuel to the fire, CNN has also begun reporting that according to multiple inside sources, the Trump administration is presently considering initiating military strikes against cartel targets within Venezuela itself, which could ostensibly mean strikes against Tren de Aragua or against the Venezuelan government itself, which the Trump administration claims is essentially indistinguishable from a cartel. Maduro himself seems to believe that the U.S. flotilla gathering off of his shores are indeed preparing to attack him and to remove him from power. He has been freaking out on social media and in speeches about the prospect. Has ordered.
Well, I think he should be freaking out because there's quite literally nothing he can do. Like nothing. Like if the US wants him gone, he's going to be gone.
a full
I mean, I suppose he can like plead with Russia and China to try and help him out or something. But yeah, I mean, other than caving to whatever Trump wants to stave off a escalation, like I don't know what else he can do. I mean, I'd be tweaking. Okay, listen, if I was just a dictator of a small country, you know, a good dictator, of course, I'd be benevolent to my people. Of course, if I was given ultimate power. But you know, if a country like the U.S. wanted to remove me from power, I would also be tweaking a little bit, you know, at the prospect of getting graped in open combat by the U.S. military.
mobilization of his military.
Yeah, 40-pound box of grape, true.
Has called for millions of additional Venezuelan citizens to join the country's armed militias to resist any attack, has deployed at least 15,000 of his troops to the border with Colombia, and has sworn to resist and fight the U.S. to the bitter end in the event of an actual attack. On the 5th of September, a pair of Venezuelan F-16 fighters flew close to the American warships in a show of...
They do, but here's the thing. Like in the one thing I'll say about the Middle Eastern countries is that these people have been fighting for centuries and millennia, right? So they have a stomach for it. You can't break these people. You can't, without just decimating them, and I mean that as in removing 90% of them, without just decimating them, I don't think there's a way to change the Middle East, right? It's been a hellhole for thousands of years. It's going to continue to be that way. South America, I don't know if they have, I don't know if the South Americans have the same appetite for war and death as the Middle Easterns do. So if there was a land invasion, I don't know if you would see the same level of just we're never giving up no matter how many people die mentality that you see in other countries.
I watched the Afghan National Army break trying to learn how to do jumping jacks.
Well, yeah, they're retarded, but the fact was that they just never gave up, right? Whether it was the Russians, whether it was the Americans, they're retarded. Yes, they're dirt floor people.
Out, and they still kept trying for hours and hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
Resolve, and the U.S. warned that they could be shot down the next time if they were deemed to be a threat. It's really not an exaggeration at all to say that the United States and Venezuela have never been closer to the brink of war than they currently are now. So what exactly is going on here? How did the US and Venezuela get to this point? What are the risks of actual conflict both now and in the future? And will we end up getting the world we played in during Mercenaries 2 back in the late 2000s?
That's right.
It's been building up towards this for quite some time, because the US and Venezuela have maintained a very adversarial relationship for pretty much
That fit would go so hard at my local high school soccer game.
I was
like, listen, that would go super hard. It would go hard at a USPSA match too. And if you want other hoodies and shirts that go hard at a USPSA match, you can also just go pick up a Weekend Gunner hoodie. That's right. Look at that ad spot. How about that? No, I mean, listen, this would go hard at a cookout, okay? But unfortunately, this is the dictator of a relatively decent-sized South American country.
My own entire lifetime. To give some historical recap, Venezuela should realistically be a global energy superpower because it controls the largest proven reserves of oil on the planet, more than even Saudi Arabia. The oil in Venezuela used to provide the country with fabulous riches, and as recently as the 1970s, Venezuela had the highest GDP per capita in Latin America because of it. But Venezuela's crude oil is heavy, sour, and full of impurities like sulfur, which means that it's pretty difficult.
I really only enjoy sweet oil, to be fair. Like when I'm drinking it straight from the faucet and it's sour, I'm like, dude, what am I even paying for, dog? This is $50 a barrel. Get out of here. It's disgusting.
To refine. Venezuela was able to gain the technical assistance it needed with drilling and refining by attracting major foreign oil companies like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, and Shell to the country through joint ventures with Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA. Oil profits were split 60.
Okay, Midwest 2A talked about the No King stuff. So did you see the international No Kings where they changed it to No Tyrants because they were like, well, actually, some of us have kings and queens, you know? Yeah. So it's actually, well, actually, that doesn't really fit culturally here, so we're just going to change it a little bit to No Tyrants, you know? So I found that very funny, the global No Kings movement. Some of them were actually like, well, actually, we have kings and we kind of like them, so we're just going to change it to No Tyrants. How about that, all right?
1940 between government-owned PDVSA and the foreign energy companies. PDVSA gained valuable foreign experience, and the economic relationship with the United States blossomed. And due to the geographic proximity of the U.S. to Venezuela, American energy companies built up a dense network of heavy-duty oil refineries across the Gulf Coast in Texas and Louisiana that could handle refining Venezuela's nearby extra-heavy crude, which increased the
Well, I mean, Chinese supremacy says we can't even process their oil as soon as real life lore says that we do have the refineries for it, or we've built the refineries for it. Listen, here's the thing. Even if it was more complicated, if it was more expensive, if they could be built, they would be built, right? I don't see why it's like, oh no, we can't modify our refineries to take this heavier crude. I'm sure we could get it done. I'm sure we could do it.
I'm
the
sure
U.S.
that there's
Venezuela
plenty of-
Or we would just occupy their own oil fields.
I was
right?
going to say, I'm sure that there's plenty of areas between our border and their border where we could set up.
Yeah, or honestly, if we wanted to be friends with another country nearby, have them refine it in their country, right, and work out some sort of deal with them where we
Like
don't even
El
have to
Salvador?
refine it. Like anything that we want to be better allied with, right? Just say, hey, we have here's a lot of really cheap crude. Refine it for us, please.
The relationship even further. By the late 1990s, an overwhelming 60 to 70% of Venezuela's oil exports were all heading to the United States, while Venezuelan oil made up about 15% of all U.S. oil imports, the single largest source from any country in the world at the time. But the huge amount.
You know, it is funny though, is I think Trump's approval ratings would go up if there was some sort of conflict in Venezuela. People would be really mad, justifiably so, right? But then if like 6 months later, oil prices or gas prices were like under $2 a gallon nationwide, like the average nationwide, people would be like, well, I didn't like that, but I'm saving a lot of money. So there's that.
Amount of money that was gushing into Venezuela through the oil industry gave way to runaway corruption, mismanagement, and overdependence. Between 1972 and 1997, it's been estimated that as much as $100 billion was simply embezzled in the country by hopelessly corrupt government officials. Meanwhile, oil came to make up a whopping 90% of Venezuela's total exports, as much as 70% of the government's operating budget, and up to 40% of the country's entire GDP, crowding out the development of virtually all other industries in the country. In the 1980s, the price of oil crashed from about $40 a barrel in 1979 to just $10 to $12 a barrel by 1986, which severely hurt the undiversified Venezuelan economy. Inflation and debt in the country both began to soar to unsustainable levels, and in 1989, the government agreed to the terms of a financial bailout from the IMF that included steep fiscal austerity measures like decreased subsidies, public sector layoffs, a currency devaluation, and increased taxes and interest rates. Enraged by the fact that the corrupt government had embezzled billions of dollars through the state-owned oil industry and then left its own people to suffer the consequences through these austerity measures, the result sparked a wave of deadly riots across the country and a sharp increase in anti-government sentiment. Riding on this wave of revolt, a revolutionary named Hugo Chavez attempted to launch a failed coup attempt against the government in 1992, briefly found himself in prison, and then eventually emerged victorious in the country's 1998 presidential election, after running on an explicitly socialist political platform, with promises that he would
Fell into president pipeline. Where have I seen this story before? Or actually, this would be the prototype.
would redistribute the nation's oil wealth in order to help reduce poverty and inequality. And so began the socialist experiment in Venezuela that has lasted for decades ever since. Chavez's policies, at least initially, actually were quite successful at reducing the country's poverty rate. But they also set in motion the chain of events that would eventually lead to Venezuela's almost complete and catastrophic collapse. Oil production in Venezuela peaked under his watch in the early 2000s. But after workers at the state-owned oil company PDVSA began striking in 2002, he simply fired thousands of the company's most experienced workers in the industry rather than giving in to their demands, which eliminated a huge amount of the country's technical expertise and know-how. He also took steps to almost completely nationalize the entire oil industry in the country through seizures of assets that were owned by the foreign oil companies like Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips, which began greatly straining Venezuela's relationship with the United States and led to dramatically reduced foreign investment in the country, which hurt Venezuela's ability to keep their own refineries and operations running in the long term. At almost the same time, he also began providing heavily subsidized Venezuelan oil to friendly, largely fellow leftist states in the region as well, like Cuba and Nicaragua, which further drained the country's remaining strategic reserves. Within just 15 years after being elected by 2013, Chavez oversaw the country's national debt more than double while watching their strategic reserves of oil dwindle and dwindle. It was an unsustainable system, but it was also a popular one that enabled Chavez to steadily expand the powers of his office to near dictatorial levels. He eliminated presidential term limits, and he had multiple independent media outlets harassed or even shut down. When he died in office in 2013, Chavez's right-hand man and vice president, Nicolas Maduro, took over the presidency after him, and he took the opportunity to rapidly coalesce his position into a full-blown dictatorship. In 2014, just the year after he took things over.
All right, maybe this guy just has lots of hard fits, right? For your Mexican uncle, you know, or your Mexican boomer at your local cookouts, right? I think he just has that type of fit. There's something genetic about Mexicans and hard fits. All right.
Did you see where Sean Penn was wearing this outfit?
No, I didn't. Although it doesn't surprise me that he would identify with some of these South American types.
Yeah, that's an interesting rabbit hole.
Yeah. Maduro has drama kid energy. No, but I mean, yeah, that we've seen that before, right? Where it's like person comes into power, really popular, coalesces power around himself, and then the decay starts to sit in, the nepotism, the incompetence, the nationalization of a lot of things to its detriment, right? Where you no longer have good, competent people actually managing systems. You just have people using internal corruption and favors and all this other sort of stuff. So that one thing that you're relying upon, that oil, well, when it's not running at peak capacity or when you're no longer selling it for high prices, right? Because the market's down. Hey, congratulations. Debt and unemployment skyrockets and you have no friends left.
The global price of oil collapsed again from more than $100 a barrel to less than $30 a barrel by early 2016, which threw the Venezuelan economy that was still cripplingly overdependent on oil into a tailspin. Chavez's generous social welfare policies and subsidies that made him hugely popular with the people only worked so long as the price of oil remained high and Venezuela made lots of money. Once the oil price collapsed under Maduro, the nation could no longer afford its lavish Chavez-era expenditures. Protests and riots.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, we have so many subsidized industries that are held in place by the American dollar and ostensibly the U.S. military, right? I mean, it's not saying that we're all that different from some of these other places. Just saying. Just saying.
Erupted across the country as services and jobs were dramatically cut and inflation skyrocketed, to which Maduro responded to with violence and crackdowns that immediately diminished his popularity. In 2015, the Obama administration declared Venezuela a national security threat and authorized targeted sanctions against Maduro and other government officials. But the true avalanche of sanctions
I continuously forget that Joe Biden was actually president for a while. I'm still in my like child mindset of where Joe Biden is the vice president of the US. And it's like, oh wait, no, he actually did. He was president for a little while. For some reason, I remember Kamala so much more than I do Joe.
Was he? I mean, even he referred to her as President Harris.
President Harris, you know the thing? The future of the yeah.
Sanctions and the shattering of U.S.-Venezuela relations would come later during the first Trump administration. As the political and economic crisis in Venezuela deepened and Maduro grew increasingly more autocratic, the first Trump administration steadily came to embrace a policy of maximum pressure against Maduro in an attempt to force his removal from office through economic means, especially after the controversy of the 2018 election in the country. That year, Maduro claimed to have won re-election to a second 6-year term as president in an election that was widely marred by irregularities, the banning of major opposition candidates from running, rock-bottom turnout, and accusations of fraud. All of Maduro's political opponents who ran against him refused to recognize the 2018.
Dude, that video of Joe Biden dropping the hard R on the Senate floor. If only we had based dark Brandon. Instead, we got the gay Brandon.
Elections results, as did the US, Australia, the Organization of American States, and the EU. At the same time, many of Maduro's international allies chose to support him and recognize the results, including Cuba, Nicaragua, Russia, Belarus, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Turkey, setting the stage for Venezuela becoming a flashpoint in the new 21st century Cold War. The first Trump administration refused to recognize the election and first declared Maduro to be an illegitimate usurper when his second term began in January of 2019. The U.S. recognized Juan Guaido, the head of the country's opposition-controlled National Assembly, as the interim president of Venezuela instead, severed its remaining diplomatic relations with Venezuela, and expelled the country's diplomats from Washington. Long-standing relations that had lasted for decades and had been strained for years were finally shattered to the point of open hostility. And on top of all of that, Trump led the U.S. into unleashing an
speaking of Joe Biden, you know, he's suspiciously had the most votes out of any president ever by a just ridiculous margin. Just absolute. Now, I don't know where they all went because they certainly didn't turn out for Kamala. And I think Trump ended up getting more votes in 2020 and 2024 than he got in 2016. But somehow there was like a 17 million vote discrepancy for 2020. Somehow, like that is just saying, you know, the 2020 election seemed to have some irregularities there.
Avalanche of new sanctions.
Sorry, what?
Couple busted pipes here and there.
Yeah. Derek's horse cum collection for 2 says race mixing is what my wife and her boyfriend do. Oh no, Derek. Heathen from Texas for 5 says, oh, absolutely, and I fully bought into it. Also have had yellow fever ever since I saw my pediatrician, Dr. Fung. Richard, choose a new PFP. All right, Richard, go. Pick a based one. Oh, actually, I have a... Did you see the other one I sent you that was also based Floyd? Do that one. Put that one up because that one's funny. No, thank you for that, Heathen. G17 Enjoyer says, didn't we have fighter jets in the 90s? They have 3 F-16s that are not in working order, so they technically have them. Whether or not they were,
or did they sell them to China?
Why would they sell an F-16? I mean, the F-16s were from the 70s or 80s. Sorry, 80s. Mark for 5 says, I know little, but my brother is deep in the military complex. Egghead states there is not a single system made by anyone that keeps him awake. In terms of like what they can do against our top of the line stuff, yeah, probably not anything of interest. Thank you, Mark. Well, at least that we know of, right?
The only system that I would be worried about would be EMP that would attack the grid.
Well, the American grid is kind of a joke. So, but an attack on American soil would be the retaliation would be swift and deadly. I guarantee you. No, EMPs aren't really going to be like that. Most stuff isn't going to be affected in the way that you see in movies and TV. Paulie B for 5 says, nice, Richard. I know I heard what I did like a FUD knows what he's got. Thank you, Paulie B. I don't know the reference there, but I'm sure it was well timed. HSB Snake for 5 says, first units to be deployed is probably the California National Guard, LMAO, about to invade Latin America with a bunch of Private Martinez and Cortez. That's right. It's like Cortez, Ramirez. And it's like they're on every side. They're all Ramirez. Thank you, HSB. Moonman for 2 says Mercenaries 1 is the best LucasArts game. They have some bangers though. I'd have to go back and check. I do love Mercenaries 1 though. Like I would. Do they have that on PC? If they had that on PC, I would download it right now because Mercenaries 1 is a great game. Thank you, Moonman. FT Skibbity Toilet Riz.
Skibbity Toilet Riz. Okay.
For 2 says Rich Trench with hearts. FT. I like toes. Jake? Question mark. Oh, I don't change my PFP. Although that is a funny one. That is a funny one. Skibbity Toilet Riz. Skibbity Toilet Riz also becomes a new member. Thank you very much for that, sir. Appreciate it. McLeod, 22486 for 5 says Saudi Arabia has most of their citizens on welfare, yet are still chugging along. Well, I wonder why. Maybe it's because their royal family is like gazillionaires or something like that, and they're at least slightly more efficacious and homogenous than some of these other places, right? Thank you, McLeod. Moonman for 10 says, I mean, if you are a foreign corporation, or any corporation really, and I seize power, if you don't kiss me on both cheeks and give me everything I want, enjoy having your assets seized, nerd. Well, that's the thing. Like when it comes to foreign corporations or like foreign corporations buying American land, I'm like, that's allowed? Why would we even allow you to do that in the first place? I think that's bunk. I say no. I think no, thank you. Ivan says you can emulate mercenaries on PCS X2. Okay, I will have to take a look at that. Thank you, Moonman. Appreciate the 10, sir. Sea Runner for 5 says this narrator ends his sentences with his voice on the way up like a woman and faggots.
Yes.
Real life lore does have an up-speaking way of talking. However, right, not my favorite, but I mean, the info is good and the video is well put together. So I'm dealing with the obnoxious music in his voice, his vocal patterns. Thank you, Sea Runner. Appreciate it, sir. HSB Snake for 5 says a suitcase, 58,000 voting ballots are left out on the street at 3 a.m. Who gets to it first, the DNC or a Latin American dictator? That's a tough one. That's tough. Oh, there you go. That's a tough one, though. Thank you, HSB Snake. I think they fight over it, honestly. Or did you see that one ballot that was designed where if you voted no, they could see it from the outside because there was like a tiny little cutout for the no section?
Yeah.
So that if they wanted to, this one got dropped or fell in the water or something, like, oh, I don't know what happened to it, they could just drop all the no ballots out. That's wild to me. Andrew Webb, new member. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Hope you're having a good night, sir. Over on Ko-Fi, we have a bunch that I need to get to real fast. Thank you, everybody, for the Ko-Fi donations as well, because, I mean, they are, rather than 30 to 50%, they only take 5. Bojangle says, did the Focus Discord ever come back up at all? No. As far as I'm aware, the Focus Trip original Discord is gone for good, according to Discord and to PSI. Armor Right Boy for 10 says, deploy the banhammer. I'm tired of the double standards of what anyone right of center can say in private chats, all while the left is actively calling for the death of all their political enemies. Yeah, who cares that people in group chats are making jokes and being meanies online when the left is quite literally calling for dead ICE agents? And dead fascists, which, by the way, they include you in the definition of fascist. The Lightspore, total nibber death, says, on one end, forever wars for oil is mega gay. On the other end, CIBs for all is based in its own way, I think. Well, I mean, if we're going to have gay ops, you might as well get people their CIBs, I suppose. Amorite Boy says, my ancestors didn't sack Rome. Fight. Oh, you're goth, huh? How goth? My ancestors didn't sack Rome, fight the Moors off the Iberian Peninsula, cross the Atlantic, settle Mexico, build the railroad north to Kansas, and build life just for our country to turn into Europe today. Well, or to turn into the Middle East today. How about that? Or North Africa, for that matter. But yeah, no, I totally get what you mean there. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you, gentlemen, for that.
On Venezuela too.
Yeah, it's like, what type of goth?
That were designed to try and encourage Maduro's removal. Venezuela's remaining access to the U.S. financial system was eliminated, which made it much more difficult for the country to borrow money and refinance debt. Other sanctions were designed to target and strangle the Venezuelan oil industry. U.S. companies were completely prohibited from purchasing Venezuelan oil, while further sanctions targeted.
Moors are not like explicitly Jewish. They're more like, Muslims. I mean, yeah, they're Muslims, but they're not black. I mean, they're like.
I mean,
they're yeah, kind of. I mean, kind of. Yeah, North Africa, very North African.
If
so
you
there's
ask the Moors, they are the original blacks.
Well, yeah, but no, he said he fought off the Moors in the Iberian Peninsula, being Spain, right? Which is based.
Yeah, I think he.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Companies that were involved in transporting Venezuelan oil to third-party countries as well. This eliminated Venezuela's ability to access the heavy-duty oil refineries around the U.S. Gulf Coast that they had used for decades to refine their oil at, while further sanctions blocked spare parts and chemicals from entering into Venezuela to prevent them from adequately maintaining their own refineries as well. Coupled with their own self-induced brain drain of experienced oil workers fired during the Chavez years and decades of mismanagement, underinvestment, and corruption, the sanctions helped cause Venezuela's oil production to completely collapse. And with it, so too did Venezuela's economy. After 2015, Venezuelan oil production began falling off a cliff as the sanctions began to bite, to the point where today, Venezuela is producing less oil than it was back during World War II, despite having the largest reserves in the world. Between 2014 and 2021, under Maduro's government, the Venezuelan economy collapsed by an almost unbelievable 3/4, one of the most catastrophic economic collapses that has ever been witnessed in modern history. Hyperinflation set in and grew to as high as 130,000% by 2018, making the Venezuelan currency almost worthless in the process. And while inflation has slowed down since then, it was still sitting at 190% as recently as 2023. All of these issues
190% year over year.
Wow.
Again, we complain about a lot here in the US, and rightfully so. We have a lot of issues, but I mean, like, there are worse places to live, to be sure. To be sure.
Is that what happened in Ohio?
7-Eleven, yeah, the city. I'm pretty sure they opened the doors to get rid of the other people that were currently there because they sided with the Moors over the other occupiers.
Plunged Venezuela into what has probably been the country's greatest civilizational crisis in its entire history. Basic goods and services, including food, water, and gasoline, all became preciously scarce, and by late 2022, more than half of Venezuela's population were reduced to living in poverty, by far the highest percentage seen on the South American continent. And all of this was explicitly designed to destroy Maduro's popularity and undermine his legitimacy within Venezuela, and hopefully...
Yeah, he does kind of talk like Armed Scholar a little bit. He's definitely faster, because I was going to put it on 1 1/4, but 1 1/4 is like pushing it for me and probably for some of the audience as well.
Yeah,
yeah, no, he does. He kind of does talk.
20 minutes left in this video.
Yeah, we're not going to get to it all. We're going to call it a 3. We're going to call it a 3 hours. We have 6 minutes, 5 minutes left.
Lead to his removal from within. But ironically, the sanctions that Trump dumped on Venezuela during his first term contributed directly to the country's unprecedented migration crisis later, during the Biden administration, that he would use as an issue to help get himself reelected in 2024. Since 2014, close to 8 million Venezuelan refugees are believed to have fled the country all around the world, with many of them heading north towards the U.S. southern border. By 2021, shortly after Trump had left office, Venezuelans became the second most common nationality arriving at the southern border, remaining only behind Mexicans. And by 2023, the numbers of undocumented Venezuelan migrants residing in the United States had increased by nearly tenfold from 2019, around when the heavy sanctions were first.
Well, that explains a lot of the gang activity from some of these groups then, doesn't it, right? That's actually wild. Well, so it is quite funny to think about. So we have Maduro, Trump is in office, Trump gets out of office, and then you're like, oh, okay, finally, maybe we can deal with the Biden admin. And then Trump comes right back, and then he sets his fleet outside your doors, and you're like, damn it. Damn it.
First imposed.
No, yeah, they all need to go back. I would prefer, like, what if, well, this would be, if there was some sort of deal that Trump could work out where he's like, listen, I'm either going to nuke you off the face of the earth and take your oil, or you can give me your oil and you take all of these people back right now. Right?
I think he should set up a system where he sends the criminal immigrants back. Not the ones who crossed illegally, send them back, but the ones who crossed illegally and then committed violent crimes.
Well, they all have to go back. They all have to go back. Well, the refineries in not in the US though. I don't want them in the US.
No. The refineries in Venezuela that we set up, like Exxon, Shell, all of these different companies, have them go down there and take over the existing structures that are already there that were abandoned in place.
Yeah.
Around 64,000 then to around 650,000 by 2023. Even worse for the first Trump administration, the sanctions didn't even accomplish their biggest goal, removing Maduro from power. He persisted clinging on to power and crushed any protests that arose against him, resulting in the deaths of dozens to hundreds of protesters since the contested 2018 election, depending on the source. And Maduro's isolation from the US and the Western world led to him increasing Venezuela's ties with Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran instead, all of which helped to buttress his position in power in various ways. Cuba's intelligence services began providing their assistance to him. Russia and Iran both began providing Venezuela with arms to replace the loss in American weapons, while China began buying up most of what remained of Venezuela's dwindling oil exports, all of which essentially made Venezuela second larger Cuba in the Western Hemisphere from a geopolitical perspective. And on top of
Hey, you're the second Cuba. Congratulations.
The sanctions, Trump also put the first bounty on Maduro during his first term as well. In 2018, the Trump administration slapped a $15 million bounty on Maduro's head, based on accusations that he was personally directing the operations of the Cartel of the Suns, along with other high-ranking Venezuelan military and political officials. Allegedly, the U.S. government accused the Cartel of the Suns of utilizing the state apparatus of Venezuela to run a vast cocaine trafficking project into the United States, Europe, and elsewhere as an alternative source of government revenue in the face of the U.S.-imposed sanctions. They further accused Maduro and the Cartel of the Suns of collaborating with the FARC in Colombia to smuggle cocaine.
All right, well, this will be a good thing to end on. I'm pretty sure this is the one.
So, if I remember correctly, FARC is the organization that George Bush Jr. was going after the day before 9/11.
Interesting. Yeah. But no, so this is a good one to end on. So just think about all of the foreign military age males we have in here from South America and their thoughts on ICE along with our what do you want to call it? Our academic class here in the US.
We gotta grab a gun. We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system. These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out.
All right, today we're going to talk about how we can find out and how much we can find out. The more you f*** around, the more you're going to find out.
You gotta grab a
Base DHIS making another banger. Another banger today. Please get rid of Polish Impulse for 5 says the only Glock I have is a Gen 519 for CCW. And my dad has a Gen 4 in 40. Worth getting a Gen 3 just to own one before they all leave the market? Not really. Not unless you're going to shoot it a lot. And at that point, it's just kind of more of the same. You know, it's not, Glocks aren't that exciting to me. You know, I like them. I shoot them. I think they're great. They're dependable. Everyone should own one. But like having like 10 of them, it's not my thing. Not my thing, right?
I don't see a point in having a Gen 3 if you already have a Gen 4.
Yeah, well, especially we had a Gen 519, right? And then his dad had a Gen 4 and 40. So, I mean, if you already have a 19, regardless of Gen, you're kind of done at that point, unless you're like, oh, I need a 47 for competition and I need this for this. If it's just for generic CCW type stuff, you have a 19, you're basically good to go. HSB Snake filling us in says that visible no vote was on the Prop 40 ballot, or sorry, the Prop 50 ballot in Cali. Have 40 on the mind. Yes, vote legalizes gerrymandering the red counties out of existence for the 2028 election. Listen, gerrymandering is insanely based when my team does it, okay? Insanely based when my team does it. And actually, we could fix a lot of politics if we just had better gerrymandering or even more accurate districts. Waffle Shooter for 5 says contributing to the war chest. Thank you very much for that, Waffle Shooter. We will put it to good works. Appreciate that, sir. Thank you for the 5. Chud for 2 says deport all brownies and Napas. Well, that's a big ask, sir. But Deus Volt, how about that? Thank you, Chud. I appreciate it, sir. Richard, what do you got going on, homie?
A brain fart, a seizure is what I have going on. For those who are not aware, I run the second channel, Focus Clips. I take the stream and I cut it up bite-sized segments for your viewing pleasure. So if you guys would be so kind, go over there and subscribe, watch the content, hit the thumbs up, do all the things that you're supposed to do. It really helps us out.
Heck yeah. Excellent. So thank you everybody for watching, for supporting, for lurking, for being in the chat, hanging out, and providing us with the means to keep it going. Gentlemen, you are the wind beneath my wings. But with that gay statement out of the way, I love you all. Everyone have a good night. God bless. And I'll see you in the next